Tonight we step gently into the valley of the Nile, where the air is cool and still in the earliest hour before dawn, and the river lies dark and shimmering like a ribbon of polished stone. The stars linger above the desert, fading slowly as the horizon softens into pale lavender and then into gold. Here, thousands of years ago, life stirred with the same patience as the flowing water, and as you listen, you may imagine yourself standing quietly at the river's edge, feeling the cool mist touch your skin, hearing the faint splash of fish beneath the surface, and smelling the damp sweetness of the earth that the Nile has kissed with its yearly flood. This is Egypt, not the Egypt of great monuments and towering temples, but the Egypt of ordinary days, of families waking to simple tasks, of laughter drifting through mud-brick courtyards, of farmers, fishermen, and children who lived by the rhythm of the water. The homes that line the riverbank are built from the earth itself, crafted by hands that shaped clay mixed with straw into sturdy bricks, dried by the blazing sun until they were strong enough to stand against the passing years. Their walls are pale and smooth, their roofs flat and shaded with woven mats, and on those roofs jars of water rest in the night air, cooled by the stars. Within these walls the night is still, cool and dim, until the faint light of morning slips through narrow doorways, touching the packed floor and waking the quiet life within. In one such home, a woman rises, stretching her arms as she steps from her sleeping mat, her feet bare against the earth. With gentle motions, she lifts a bundle of reeds and sweeps the dust from the floor. The sound soft, the rhythm familiar, the task repeated countless mornings before. In a corner, a clay oven shaped like a small beehive holds glowing embers, and from it drifts the comforting fragrance of baking bread. The bread, made from emmer wheat ground by hand, is shaped into rounds that will soon be eaten with honey, dates, or fresh figs. A meal both simple and sweet. Outside in the courtyard a rooster calls, announcing the day to the village, and a lean dog stretches in the first rays of light. The children stir on their mats, rubbing sleep from their eyes, their laughter already breaking into the morning quiet as they whisper and play. The father prepares for his work, adjusting a simple linen kilt tied at the waist, his skin bronzed from long hours beneath the sun, his movements calm as he reaches for the tools that will guide him through another day in the fields. Life begins gently here, not in sudden bursts, but in slow awakenings, as though the village itself rises with the sun, stretching and yawning in harmony with the desert and the river. Beyond the houses, the Nile waits with its quiet song. Fishermen carry their narrow wooden boats to the water's edge, placing coiled nets carefully inside. They push away with long oars, the wood creaking softly as it dips into the water, the ripples spreading in circles that shimmer with the first pink glow of dawn. Birds rise from the reeds, gliding across the surface, their cries sharp but fleeting, leaving the morning once more to its stillness. The men know the river well, its moods and currents, its secret places where fish gather, and as their boats drift, they cast their nets with slow, practiced movements, trusting the Nile to provide as it always has. The air grows brighter, the sky filling with layers of gold and pale blue, and the village awakens more fully now. Neighbors greet one another with quiet voices. Women carry jars balanced gracefully on their heads to fetch water, the sound of footsteps mingling with the rustle of palm leaves swaying above. Children chase each other along the narrow paths, their laughter ringing like bells, while elders sit at the thresholds of their homes, watching with eyes that have seen many such mornings. The scent of bread, and grain mixes with the smell of damp earth and the sound of distant oxen lowing carries on the breeze. Everywhere, life is unhurried, each task a part of a rhythm older than memory, a rhythm tied to the river and the sun. For those who tend the fields, this is the moment to set out, tools in hand, moving in small groups along the narrow paths that wind between houses and reeds. The land beyond the village is green and rich from the recent flood, its soil dark and heavy, promising a generous harvest if cared for with patience. Oxen are yoked to simple wooden plows, their broad hooves pressing into the damp earth as farmers guide them steadily forward. Behind them, seed is scattered from baskets, the grain falling in soft arcs that glitter briefly in the light before sinking into the soil. It is a scene repeated countless times, yet each season feels fresh. For the land renews itself with each gift of the river. The women join in the work, their steps graceful as they carry water jars to moisten young shoots, or gather herbs and vegetables from the smaller gardens that grow near the river's edge. Their linen dresses are light and flowing, their hair bound with simple ties, their movements quiet yet strong. Children, too, play their part, chasing birds away from the seeds, gathering reeds for weaving, or simply running with laughter through the fields, their joy echoing like music. And always, the Nile is present, glinting in the corner of the eye, a steady reminder that all life flows from its waters. There is a peace in this labor, a calmness born of routine. The farmers speak in low voices, sometimes singing simple songs as they work, their melodies drifting like a lullaby across the land. The oxen plod steadily unhurried, the earth opening behind them in neat lines that promise future harvests. From time to time, the farmers pause, leaning on their tools to wipe their brows, drinking cool water from clay jars, sharing a word or a smile before returning to their tasks. The sun climbs higher, and with it the warmth deepens. Yet the work continues, slow and steady, woven into the pattern of life as the morning unfolds into midday. The hum of the fields grows, a harmony of human voices, animal sounds, and the soft rustle of crops in the breeze. The scent of damp earth mingles with the sweetness of blossoms, and above, white birds drift lazily across the wide sky. This is the true Egypt, not the Egypt of monuments carved in stone, but the Egypt of living hands and beating hearts, of quiet endurance and simple joys. The grandeur of pyramids may endure for millennia, but the true life of the land is here, in these fields, in these ordinary mornings that repeated endlessly, carrying families through generations. And as you rest within this vision, picture the village that waits beyond the fields, where the market stirs, where neighbors gather, and where laughter and trade mingle in the shade of palm trees. Soon we will wander there into the narrow streets, to hear the calls of merchants and smell the spices of the bazaar. But for now, let your mind linger in this calm expanse of green, beneath the bright sky, by the river that has always given life. The Nile flows on, eternal and patient, carrying you deeper into the gentle rhythm of Egypt's days. And as you drift further into sleep, hold this peace close. For in the next breath of our journey, the marketplace awaits. The sun has now risen fully above the horizon, spilling golden light over the land and warming the courtyards of the village. From the fields, farmers slowly make their way back toward the cluster of houses, their tools resting across their shoulders, their steps steady, their voices calm as they greet neighbors who are beginning their daily tasks. The air is filled with the mingled sounds of life, the soft braying of donkeys, the bleating of goats, the chatter of children running barefoot through narrow lanes. Yet even in this activity, there is no sense of rush. The pace of life here is gentle, unfolding like a slow song, each note blending with the next dot. At the heart of the village lies the marketplace, a shaded open space where traders and neighbors gather. The ground is packed firm by countless footsteps, and the air is filled with the earthy scent of grain, the sweetness of dates, and the faint tang of fish drying in the sun. Merchants arrange their wares upon mats and wooden stands, their hands moving with practiced ease, while others carry baskets balanced upon their heads, filled with figs, onions, garlic, and fragrant herbs freshly gathered. The market awakens not in a burst of noise, but in a low hum like the murmur of a river, voices weaving together in easy conversation. A woman pauses to examine a string of dried fish, her fingers brushing against the scales as she weighs her decision. Nearby, another reaches for a jar of honey, its golden surface catching the light. Children dart between the stalls, drawn by the bright colors of pottery painted with simple designs, or by the smell of warm bread sold by a baker whose clay oven still glows with heat. The bread is round and firm, made from wheat ground by hand, baked with care, and eaten by almost every family in the village. It is a taste as common as the air itself, yet still comforting, still nourishing in one corner of the market. A potter sits before a small wheel, his hands coated with wet clay. With slow, steady movements, he shapes the vessel, the soft earth rising beneath his touch, becoming smooth and symmetrical as the wheel spins. Around him stand finished jars, bowls, and cups, their surfaces still cool from the shade. A child watches him work, fascinated by the way the shapeless mass becomes something useful, something beautiful. The potter looks up and smiles, his hands never pausing, his craft a rhythm that flows as naturally as the Nile itself. Not far away, a scribe sits cross-legged with a small palette of reed brushes and ink. His task is to record transactions for those who cannot write, noting down the exchange of grain for linen, or jars of beer for baskets of dates. His script flows across thin sheets of papyrus, each mark neat and careful, his brush moving with quiet authority. To write is a gift here, a skill of respect, and a scribe is greeted with nods and bows by those who pass. He represents knowledge, order, the bridge between memory and permanence. The marketplace is alive with color, scent, and sound, yet all in harmony. The linen garments of the villagers ripple gently in the breeze, their pale fabric glowing softly in the sunlight. The smell of herbs drifts from a stall where a woman arranges bundles of mint, cumin, and coriander. The murmur of voices rises as friends pause to exchange greetings. Their words simple but warm, asking after health, after children, after the state of the fields. Life here is woven not from grandeur but from connection, from the quiet strength of community. As the morning deepens, music drifts through the air. A man with a lute-like instrument strums a few notes, the sound delicate, soothing, a melody that curls through the marketplace like smoke from a fire. Children gather to listen, swaying unconsciously to the rhythm. Some begin to clap in time, their small palms creating a gentle percussion. The musician smiles, his voice rising softly as he sings of the Nile, of love, of the turning of the seasons. It is a song known to many, yet always fresh, always welcome. In Egypt, music belongs to the heart as much as bread belongs to the table. In the shade of a palm, An old woman tells a story to two children perched at her feet. Her voice is low, melodic, carrying tales of the gods and their endless watch over the land. She speaks of Ra, the sun god, whose daily journey across the sky brings warmth and light, and of Osiris, whose blessings ensure that the crops will grow, and of Isis, protector of families, whose gentle presence is felt in every home. The children listen wide-eyed, their minds carried away on the soft current of her words, the bustle of the marketplace fading as they lose themselves in the dream of myth. Nearby, men gather around jars of beer, the drink brewed from barley, thick and nourishing, sipped slowly as they speak of the harvest, of neighbors, of the quiet events of daily life. The conversation is calm, unhurried, flowing as easily as the drink itself. There is laughter too, though never loud or harsh, only soft bursts that fade quickly into the air. Even joy here feels gentle, woven into the peace of the day. At midday the sun shines strongly, and the marketplace grows warmer. Traders rest in the shade of their awnings, sipping water from cool clay jars. Children grow drowsy, curling against their mothers, their laughter replaced by soft yawns. The hum of the market softens, like a song reaching its quiet refrain. Yet life continues, steady and sure, woven into the eternal rhythm of the Nile. For a moment, let us close our eyes and breathe in this scene, the colors of painted pottery, the scent of bread and herbs, the sound of music drifting lazily, the sight of neighbors greeting one another beneath the palms. It is a moment that belongs to no single day, for it was lived again and again, through centuries of mornings, each one blending into the next, forming the quiet tapestry of Egyptian life. And as the marketplace hums gently in the warmth of midday, imagine what awaits when evening comes, when families return to their homes, when lamps flicker against smooth mud brick walls, and when the stars rise once more over the silent desert. Soon we will step into that peaceful twilight, into the quiet of courtyards and the laughter of families gathered for supper. But for now, let this market linger in your mind, calm and steady as the Nile flows nearby, carrying you deeper into rest. The sun begins to lean westward, its golden light softening as it touches the rooftops of the village and paints the mud brick walls with hues of amber and rose. The air, heavy with the warmth of the day, now cools gently as shadows lengthen across the narrow lanes. Farmers return slowly from the fields, their tools resting on their shoulders, their steps calm, their hearts filled with the satisfaction of work completed. The voices of the marketplace begin to quiet as stalls are packed away. Baskets lifted once more onto heads, jars carried carefully back toward waiting homes. The hum of life does not end, but softens, like a lullaby reaching its final notes. In the courtyards, women light small fires of dried reeds and wood, preparing the evening meal. The smell of cooking fills the air, lentils simmering slowly, bread warmed once more in clay ovens, vegetables seasoned with herbs gathered earlier in the day. A sweet scent of figs and dates lingers nearby, while jars of beer and water are set out for the family to share. Children, still restless from the marketplace, run barefoot through the courtyards, chasing one another until laughter turns to tiredness, and they curl on mats to listen to the sounds of their mothers working. Donkeys bray softly from their enclosures, goats settle down, and birds return to their nests among the palms as twilight deepens. Neighbors gather in doorways, exchanging the last words of the day. A man asks after a friend's harvest. A woman offers a piece of bread to a passing child. Elders share quiet smiles as they lean upon their staffs. The sense of community is strong here, woven not from great declarations, but from small gestures, from kindness shared in daily life. Each family belongs not only to its own courtyard, but to the village as a whole, connected by the river, the land, and the rhythm of seasons. Inside the homes, lamps are lit, small clay bowls filled with oil, a simple wick glowing softly. Their flickering light dances against smooth walls, filling the rooms with a golden glow that pushes back the shadows. Families gather close, seated on mats, their voices low as they share their meal. Bread is passed from hand to hand, lentils scooped gently, figs placed in small bowls. The sound of eating is quiet, broken only by occasional laughter or the soft voice of a child asking a question. In this gentle setting, food is not just nourishment but connection, a thread that ties parents to children, elders to youth, neighbors to neighbors. After supper, the air grows cooler and many step outside once more, drawn to the open courtyards and the wide sky above. The desert, silent beyond the village, stretches endlessly, its sands glowing faintly beneath the first silver of the moon. The Nile, calm and eternal, reflects the stars as they begin to appear, one by one, across the heavens. Children lie on their backs, pointing upward with eager fingers, asking about the shapes of constellations, about the stories of gods written in the stars. Parents answer with patient voices, telling of Ra, who journeys each day across the sky, of Nut, the goddess of the heavens, whose body arches over the earth like a canopy of stars, and of Osiris, whose presence ensures the return of life each season. These stories are more than tales, they are comfort, a reminder that the world is watched over, that the rhythm of day and night, of flood and harvest, is guided by hands greater than their own. Some families sit quietly by the riverbank, listening to the soft ripple of water against the reeds. The sound is steady, soothing, like a heartbeat. Fishermen mend their nets by lamplight, their fingers moving with practiced ease as they prepare for the next day's work. Children grow drowsy, their heads resting against their mothers' laps, their eyes heavy as they watch the lamps flicker. The smell of earth and water fills the air, cool and clean, carrying with it the promise of rest. In the center of the village, a storyteller begins his tale. Men, women, and children gather around, seated on mats, their faces glowing in the firelight. His voice is low, rhythmic, weaving images of ancient kings, of battles fought not with harshness but with wisdom, of gods who shaped the world, and of lovers whose hearts endured beyond time. Each word falls like a soft stone into a still pool, sending ripples of wonder into the minds of his listeners. The children lean forward, their eyes wide, their bodies still. Adults close their eyes, letting the story carry them like a boat upon the Nile. The fire crackles, the stars shine, and the night deepens around them. As the story ends, silence falls, not heavy but peaceful. Families rise slowly, returning to their homes, carrying sleeping children in their arms, whispering their good nights. The lamps burn low, their light soft and steady, before they are extinguished one by one. Darkness spreads through the village, a gentle darkness that holds no fear, only rest. The moon glows above, the stars shimmer, the river flows, eternal and unchanging. Inside the quiet houses, children sleep on mats beside their parents, their breathing soft and even. Outside, the fields rest in the moonlight, the crops swaying gently in the breeze. The oxen sleep, the birds are still, the world itself seems to pause. Egypt breathes in harmony with the night, its heart beating with the Nile, its dreams carried by the desert wind, and as you imagine yourself beneath that wide Egyptian sky, you may feel the same calm that the villagers felt, the same peace that comes with the end of a day well lived. The river flows on, steady and eternal, whispering its lullaby through the reeds, carrying you too into rest. Soon, we will wander further into the festivals and gatherings, the songs and rituals that filled the lives of these people with joy and meaning. But for now, let the night of Egypt cradle you gently. The stars above your blanket, the Nile your song, guiding you deeper and deeper into sleep. The days in Egypt, though simple and steady, were never without moments of joy, for scattered among the rhythm of work and the calm of evenings were the great festivals, times when the village stirred with music, color, and celebration. These festivals, tied to the cycles of the Nile, to the changing of seasons, and to the worship of the gods, brought together neighbors, families, and strangers in harmony. And for those who lived along the river, they were both a time of devotion and of delight. When a festival approached, the air seemed to change. Days before, people prepared by cleaning their homes, weaving garlands of flowers, and grinding extra grain for the bread that would be baked in abundance. Women dyed linen with soft colors, pale blues and gentle yellows, to wear on the day of celebration, while men repaired their sandals and polished their jewelry of copper and faience, simple but shining in the sun. Children were perhaps the most excited of all, their eyes bright as they watched the preparations, their laughter carrying through the narrow streets. For them, a festival meant sweet treats, games played in the courtyards, and stories told until late in the night. At dawn on the morning of a festival, the village awoke not with the calm murmur of ordinary days, but with an eager energy, families dressed in their best garments, adorning themselves with amulets and charms believed to bring luck and blessing. The smell of roasting meat filled the courtyards, mingling with the scent of honey cakes and figs. Musicians tuned their instruments, flutes carved from reeds, lutes with strings stretched tight, drums with skins warmed by the fire. Their sounds drifted through the air even before the festivities began, as though the day itself was humming in anticipation. The heart of every festival was the procession, when statues of the gods were carried from their temples, adorned with flowers and jewels, their images reflecting the divine presence among the people. Priests in white linen led the way, their steps measured, their voices chanting prayers that echoed through the village. Behind them came singers, their voices rising and falling like the river's own song, and dancers who moved with slow, graceful gestures that mirrored the cycles of nature. Villagers lined the paths, bowing their heads, lifting their hands, offering flowers, bread, or beer as gifts. The air was thick with incense, its sweet smoke curling toward the sky, carrying prayers upward like whispered dreams. After the solemnity of the procession came the joy of gathering. Large spaces near the river were filled with mats and jars of beer, with baskets of fruit, bread, and roasted fish. Families spread out together, sharing their meals, offering bites to neighbors, pouring drinks for one another. The sound of conversation swelled, mingling with bursts of laughter and the steady rhythm of music. Children played games in the sand, tossing carved sticks, racing one another, their small feet kicking up dust as their voices rang clear. The older ones tried their skill at mock wrestling, cheered on by their friends. Everywhere there was life, gentle and abundant, as the sun climbed higher. Dancers moved into the open space, their bodies swaying in time to the music. They wore collars of beads that glistened in the light, their arms painted with henna, their movements slow at first and then faster, though never harsh, always flowing like water. Flute players leaned into their notes, the sound bright and airy, while drummers struck a steady beat that pulsed through the crowd. The people clapped in rhythm, their voices rising in chorus. Songs of gratitude for the Nile, for the gods, for the harvest, for life itself in the midst of the celebration. Stories were told, tales of creation, of gods and kings, of heroes and lovers. A storyteller would rise, his voice commanding attention, his words painting vivid pictures that carried the listeners into another world. He spoke of Ra's daily voyage across the sky, of the tears of Isis that caused the Nile to flood, of Osiris who taught mankind to farm, and of Hathor, goddess of music and joy, who smiled upon the laughter of children and the beating of drums. Each story was met with sighs of wonder, with murmurs of recognition, for though the tales were old, they lived anew in each telling, shaping the hearts of those who heard them. As the afternoon softened into evening, the celebration grew calmer. The light of the sun mellowed into gold, casting long shadows across the sand. Families gathered once more, tired but content, their bellies full, their hearts light. Musicians played softer melodies now, gentle tunes that rose like the evening breeze. The priests gave blessings, sprinkling water drawn from the Nile, its cool drops falling on bowed heads, a symbol of purification and renewal. And slowly, as stars began to appear, the festival moved toward its end. Yet for the people, the memory of the day lingered long after. Children fell asleep in their mothers' arms, their faces still glowing with the excitement of games and sweets. Fathers carried baskets half empty, their laughter easy, their voices low as they spoke of the joy shared. Women hummed songs as they walked, their necklaces glinting softly in the starlight. The village, though weary, was filled with a peace deeper than silence, a peace born of community, of shared devotion, of lives interwoven like reeds in a mat dot in Egypt. Such festivals were not rare, for the gods were honored often, and each season brought its own celebrations. Some were small, held only within a village, while others were grand, stretching for days, with boats carrying statues of deities along the Nile, their journeys watched by crowds that lined the riverbanks. But whether small or vast, the spirit was the same: gratitude, reverence, and joy. These moments lifted the people from the rhythm of labor and reminded them of the beauty that surrounded them, of the gifts they received, and of the eternal flow of the river that gave them life. And as night fell after a festival, the lamps flickered once more in the homes. The courtyards grew still, and the Nile reflected the stars above, silent witness to all that had passed. The people of Egypt, lying on their mats, felt the gentle ache of tired limbs, the warmth of food and laughter still lingering in their hearts. They drifted to sleep beneath the wide desert sky, dreaming of gods and rivers, of music and light, knowing that tomorrow the rhythm of daily life would return, calm and steady, yet always touched by the memory of celebration. Now, as you too close your eyes, let this festival linger in your imagination: the soft music, the laughter, the scent of bread and incense, the glow of firelight on smiling faces. Soon we will wander even deeper into Egypt's daily life, into the quiet world of children at play, of learning and stories, of simple joys that made their days bright. But for now, rest in this moment of peace, carried gently by the same eternal Nile. The life of a child in ancient Egypt was simple. bright and filled with the gentle joys of discovery. Though their parents worked in the fields, tended the markets, or prepared the household meals, the children of the Nile lived in a world where play and wonder were never far away. From the moment the sun rose over the desert horizon to the time stars glittered above the courtyards, their days flowed with laughter, learning, and the small adventures of youth. In the early hours of morning, when the air was still cool and the earth carried the faint scent of dew, children would follow their mothers to the riverbank. While jars were filled with water, the little ones splashed along the edges of the Nile, their bare feet sinking into soft mud, their voices carrying in clear, high tones. They picked up smooth pebbles polished by the river's current, tossing them into the water to watch the ripples widen and fade. Sometimes they knelt in the reeds, peering with curiosity at tiny frogs or fish darting through the shallows. For them, the Nile was more than the lifeblood of the land. It was a playground, a teacher, a mystery that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Back in the courtyards, play continued. Children invented games. From the simplest of things, sticks became soldiers, pebbles became treasures, and scraps of pottery turned into tokens for counting or trading. Some played a game of tossing small stones into patterns drawn in the dust, their eyes sharp, their laughter bubbling each time a pebble bounced the wrong way. Others raced barefoot through the narrow lanes, their arms outstretched, their voices calling like birds. The sound of their joy filled the air, blending with the hum of daily tasks, bringing lightness to the steady rhythm of the village. Dolls carved from wood or shaped from clay were cherished companions. Some were painted with simple faces, their hair made from threads of string or strips of cloth. Others were shaped more crudely, yet still loved, carried everywhere in small hands. Children whispered secrets to them, rocked them to sleep on tiny mats, or lined them up in neat rows as though preparing them for lessons. These dolls, fragile yet enduring, carried the warmth of countless embraces, reminders that even in a world of toil and labor, tenderness thrived. Learning, too, was part of childhood, though it arrived gently, woven into the fabric of daily life. Most children learned by watching, observing their parents weaving baskets, grinding grain, or guiding oxen across the fields. A boy might follow his father to the river, watching how nets were cast, his small hands trying clumsily to mimic the motion. A girl might sit beside her mother, helping to knead dough or thread reeds for mats, her fingers slowly learning the rhythm of work that would one day be hers. In these simple acts, knowledge passed quietly from one generation to the next, carried not in books but in gestures, in patience, in repetition. For some children, especially boys of certain families, learning also meant study under a scribe. In shaded courtyards or temple schools, they sat cross-legged with reed brushes in hand, tracing symbols carefully onto shards of pottery or thin sheets of papyrus. The teacher's voice was steady, guiding them through the mysteries of hieroglyphs, teaching them how words could carry memory, how ink could capture a thought forever. These lessons were not always easy, but the children felt the weight of their importance. To write was to hold a kind of magic, a bridge between the fleeting moment and eternity. Even those who did not study formally learned to respect the written word, to bow their heads slightly at the sight of a scribe's work, to recognize in those markings the strength of memory. As midday approached, play grew quieter. The sun was high, its heat pressing against the earth. Children gathered in the shade of walls or palm trees, sharing figs, bread, or dates from small baskets. Some played softly with carved toys shaped like animals, lions, hippos, or crocodiles made from clay. Reminders of creatures that roamed the land or swam the river. Others lay drowsily in the shade, their eyes heavy, lulled by the hum of cicadas and the distant murmur of their parents' voices. For a time, even their boundless energy yielded to the rhythm of the heat, and stillness covered the village like a warm blanket. When the air cooled again in the afternoon, their energy returned. Boys played at wrestling in the dust, their bodies moving with surprising grace, their laughter echoing as they tumbled together. Girls clapped their hands in rhythm, singing songs that had been sung for generations. Their melodies, sweet and familiar, carried on the breeze like a soft chant. Older children helped younger ones, guiding their steps, sharing their toys, passing along the lessons of play just as their parents passed along the lessons of work. In their games was the first taste of responsibility, of community, of belonging to something larger than themselves. Evenings brought the greatest delight of all the gathering of stories, as lamps were lit and families gathered in courtyards. Children curled close to their parents, waiting for the gentle voice of an elder to begin. They listened wide-eyed to tales of gods and kings, of animals that spoke, of journeys to distant lands. Their imaginations soared, weaving images of temples glowing in the sun, of gods striding across the desert, of boats sailing to mysterious shores. Sometimes they drifted into sleep before the story ended, their dreams carrying them further into the worlds that words had opened. For Egyptian children, life was not without its hardships. Illness came often, food could be scarce in lean years, and work awaited them as they grew older. Yet, in the bright spaces between, in the laughter of games, in the warmth of family, in the wonder of stories, they found joy. Their world was not grand, but it was rich in the things that matter most: connection, learning, imagination, and love. And as the stars rose above their village, the children of Egypt slept soundly on their mats, their small bodies curled beneath the watchful eyes of their parents, their dreams filled with the images of the Datha, shimmer of the Nile, the warmth of the sun, the laughter of friends, the stories of gods. In their dreams, the world was wide and endless, filled with promise. As you rest now, picture those children playing at the river's edge, their voices bright, their games simple, their hearts light. Let their laughter carry you into calm, for soon we will wander again into the daily life of Egypt, stepping into the quiet routines of faith and devotion, into the shrines and rituals that brought the sacred into every ordinary day. But for now, let the sound of their joy linger in your mind, soft and soothing as you drift deeper into sleep. Faith was woven into every thread of life in ancient Egypt. For the people who lived along the Nile, the sacred was not separate from the ordinary. It flowed gently through their daily routines like the river itself. To them, the gods were ever present, in the rising of the sun, in the growth of the crops, in the coolness of water, in the warmth of the hearth. Each small act of devotion, each whispered prayer, was part of a vast conversation between human and divine, a rhythm that guided the days as surely as the passing of light into darkness at dawn, as the first rays of sunlight touched the earth. Many villagers greeted the new day with a simple prayer. Standing at their thresholds, they lifted their arms toward the east, honoring Ra, the sun god, whose daily journey across the sky sustained all life. The act was quiet, deeply personal, and filled with gratitude. Mothers prayed for the health of their children, farmers prayed for fertile fields, and travelers prayed for safety on the road. These prayers did not need temples or priests. They belonged to the hearts of the people, spoken softly into the morning air Yet temples were central to the life of Egypt, and even the smallest village had its shrine, a modest space where offerings could be placed, where the presence of the gods was honored. Larger temples, found in towns and cities, were places of grandeur, their tall columns painted with bright colors, their walls carved with scenes of divine stories and ancient kings. But for the ordinary villager, these spaces were less about splendor and more about connection. Inside the cool shade of the temple, where the scent of incense lingered and the flicker of oil lamps glowed against stone walls, a person could feel the nearness of eternity. Priests tended these sacred spaces with great care. Dressed in clean white linen, they moved with slow, deliberate steps, their heads often shaved as a sign of purity. At dawn, they bathed statues of the gods with scented water, anointed them with oils, and dressed them in fine fabrics. To the people, these statues were not mere stone or wood, they were vessels of divine presence, cared for as one would care for a living guest. Hymns were sung in soft voices, the music rising gently into the high halls, while incense burned steadily, its smoke curling upward like a prayer made visible. For villagers, festivals and rituals offered the chance to draw close to these sacred spaces. Processions carried images of the gods beyond the temple walls, allowing even those who seldom traveled to glimpse the divine. Offerings were made not only in times of plenty, but also in times of need. Bread, beer, flowers, and small tokens of devotion placed carefully at shrines. Each gift, however humble, was believed to carry weight, for it represented the heart of the giver. Daily devotion also lived within the household. In quiet corners of many homes, small altars were arranged, often simple niches in the wall where a figurine or painted image stood. Families placed offerings here: 2 drops of beer, bits of bread, flowers gathered from the fields. At these altars, prayers were made to household gods and protective spirits. Base, the cheerful dwarf god with a fierce yet kind face, was often invoked to protect children, to chase away illness or misfortune. Tauret, the hippopotamus-shaped goddess, was honored by mothers who saw in her the promise of safe childbirth and the safeguarding of family life. The rhythm of devotion was not only about ritual but about presence. To walk along the river was to remember Hopi, the god of the Nile, whose floods gave life to the land. To see the moon rise over the desert was to remember Thoth, the god of wisdom, who measured time and recorded the truth. Even the act of planting seeds or grinding grain was sacred, for it honored Osiris, lord of the afterlife, who first taught humans to farm and whose eternal rebirth was reflected in every harvest. Music, too, was an offering. Hymns were sung softly in temples, accompanied by the sound of flutes and drums. These songs were not loud or grand, but gentle, their tones rising and falling like the breath of the earth. In homes, women sang as they worked, their voices offering simple praises, their melodies a form of prayer woven into daily life. Even children, in their play, sometimes echoed these songs, repeating phrases they had heard in festivals, their laughter mingling with words of reverence. Death, too, was part of this devotion, though it was not spoken of harshly or with fear. To the Egyptians, the journey into the afterlife was a continuation of life itself, a crossing into another world where the heart would be weighed, and where the soul, if pure, would live forever in the presence of the gods. This belief shaped how they lived each day with care, with gratitude, with the quiet assurance that each act of kindness, each word of truth, each prayer whispered to the gods, carried eternal significance. Imagine a quiet evening in a village, The air is cool, the stars have begun to shine, and families gather at small household shrines. A child places a flower before a figurine of base, giggling softly, not fully understanding but still sharing in the ritual. A mother pours a small libation of water, murmuring thanks for the health of her family. A father bows his head, thinking of the coming flood, hoping for its generosity. Around them, the lamps flicker, the night deepens, and the sense of connection between family and gods, between earth and sky fills the air like a steady, calming presence. For the people of Egypt, faith was not a burden but a comfort. It surrounded them, embraced them, gave shape to their joys and meaning to their struggles. It was in the warmth of the sun, in the coolness of water, in the laughter of children, in the songs of festivals, in the silence of prayer. It was everywhere, always. And as you let this vision settle within you, imagine how it must have felt to live in a world where every dawn was a gift from Ra, every harvest a blessing from Osiris, every child a treasure guarded by Base and Tauret, every breath of wind a whisper from the gods. Let that sense of sacred calm carry you, as the Egyptians themselves were carried into peace, into rest. Soon we will drift further into the quieter corners of Egyptian life, into the stillness of homes at night, into the small comforts and routines that closed each day. But for now, let the devotion of these people, gentle and enduring, linger in your thoughts, as steady as the Nile, as timeless as the stars. Inside the homes of ancient Egypt, life unfolded in rhythms as gentle as the river outside. The houses were not vast palaces but modest spaces, made from sun-dried mud brick, their walls thick enough to keep out the heat of day and to hold coolness long into the night. From the outside, they appeared simple square structures with flat roofs, but within, they held the warmth of family, the quiet strength of community, and the calm of evenings spent together in peace. At the close of a long day, the family gathered in the courtyard, an open space beneath the wide desert sky. Here the air was cooler, touched by the soft breeze drifting from the Nile. Clay lamps flickered on ledges, their glow steady and golden, casting gentle shadows that danced against the pale walls. The smell of cooking lingered, bread warm from the oven, lentils seasoned with herbs, perhaps a small portion of fish or roasted vegetables. Simple foods, shared with gratitude, became more than nourishment. They were a moment of pause, of togetherness, of quiet joy. Meals were eaten from pottery bowls, passed between hands, with no hurry or ceremony. Bread was dipped into lentils, figs were shared in small bites, dates were split open, their sweetness savored. Water, cool and stored in jars throughout the day, refreshed the family, while beer brewed from barley, thick and hearty, added comfort. Children leaned against their mothers, their voices quieting after the brightness of play. Fathers spoke softly of the day's work, of the fields, of neighbors met at the market. The sound of conversation blended with the night itself, low and rhythmic, like the murmuring of the river Dot. After supper, the household slipped into gentle routines. Mothers tidied the kitchen area, sweeping away the last crumbs, placing tools neatly against the wall. Fathers checked the courtyard, making sure the animals were settled, the donkey tied, the goats resting, the chickens quiet in their coop. Children, still restless, played with their dolls or rolled small pebbles across the ground in simple games. Their laughter softer now, fading as sleep began to weigh on their eyes. The night settled into a calmness that embraced every corner of the home. On many evenings, stories were told. An elder perhaps, a grandmother with lines of wisdom etched into her face, or a father with a voice deep and steady began to speak. The children listened, wide-eyed, as tales unfolded. Some stories were of gods and goddesses, their voices filling the sky with thunder or their hands guiding the floodwaters of the Nile. Others were simpler, about clever animals or kind-hearted neighbors, about patience rewarded or mistakes forgiven. Each story carried a lesson, woven gently into words that lulled as much as they taught. The flames of the lamps flickered in time with the voice. The stars shone steadily above, and the children drifted closer to sleep with every sentence. The homes themselves carried their own sense of rhythm. Rooms were small but purposeful, a space for cooking, a space for sleeping, sometimes a space for weaving or storing grain. Mats woven from reeds lined the floors, cool beneath bare feet, soft beneath resting bodies. Pottery jars stood in corners, some filled with water, others with grain or dried herbs. Simple furniture, low stools, woven baskets, wooden chests sofaed both comfort and function. On the roofs above, mats were laid out, where in warmer nights families might sleep beneath the stars. The cool air brushing against their faces, the desert sky wide and endless above. For the children, bedtime was not always an immediate thing. They lingered, asking questions about the stars, about the gods, about the world beyond their village. Their parents answered with patience, their words soft, reassuring, their tone more important than the content. Slowly, gently, the children's eyes closed. Their bodies curled on mats beside their parents, their breathing steady, their dreams carrying them away. In the quiet of the night, the house seemed to breathe too, holding the family in its embrace. For the adults, there was a deeper stillness. The day's tasks were done, the children safe, the animals settled, the lamps flickering low. Some sat in silence, listening to the sounds of the night, the distant call of a bird, the rustle of reeds in the breeze, the whisper of the river flowing endlessly nearby. Others spoke in low voices, sharing thoughts, remembering ancestors, or offering prayers for tomorrow. These moments were intimate, small yet timeless, woven into the very fabric of life. The night in Egypt was never silent, but its sounds were soothing rather than loud. Dogs barked softly in the distance. Donkeys stirred in their enclosures. The wind moved across the desert, carrying with it the cool scent of sand and stone. The Nile lapped gently against its banks, eternal and calm. Above, the sky was alive with stars, more numerous than one could count, their light clear and steady, unbroken by clouds. To lie beneath them was to feel both small and infinite, part of the great cycle of life that moved through all things. And so, the homes of ancient Egypt, though simple, were sanctuaries of peace. They held families together, sheltered them from the sun, welcomed them into the coolness of night, and carried their laughter, their prayers, their stories, their dreams. These walls of mud and straw, humble as they were, stood firm through years and seasons, through floods and droughts, through lives lived and lives remembered. They were places of love, of learning, of rest. As you picture one of these homes, lit by flickering lamps, filled with the warmth of family, touched by the cool breeze of the Nile, let your thoughts drift into that quiet night. Imagine lying on a woven mat, your body relaxed, your breath steady. The soft voices of loved ones nearby, the stars watching from above. Let that sense of calm settle into you, as steady as the river, as soothing as the desert wind. Soon, we will move further into the broader picture of Egyptian life, into the cities and towns where trade flourished, where crafts thrived, where people gathered in larger numbers. But for now, stay here in the stillness of a simple home, resting in the quiet beauty of an Egyptian night. The villages of Egypt, though calm and modest, were not the only centers of life. Along the wide river, larger towns and cities grew, places where trade flourished, where crafts were honed, where temples rose proudly above the rooftops, and where the hum of daily life was stronger, though never harsh. To walk through an Egyptian town was to step into a rhythm both familiar and new familiar in the laughter of children, the scent of bread, the glow of lamps, and new in the richness of goods, the variety of voices, and the tapestry of lives woven together. As you imagine entering such a town, the first thing you feel is the warmth of the sun upon stone streets, narrow lanes winding between tall mud brick houses, their windows small and shaded to keep out the heat. The air carries a blend of scents, bread fresh from ovens, spices carried in woven baskets, the sharp tang of fish from the river, the sweetness of dried figs, the faint smoke of incense drifting from a nearby shrine. The streets are alive, yet the pace is unhurried, each step taken with the ease of people who know that life is best lived slowly. In the heart of the town lies the marketplace, broad and busy, shaded by cloth awnings stretched between poles, their fabric fluttering gently in the breeze. Here, merchants display their goods upon mats or low tables. Pottery gleams in the light, each piece painted with simple patterns, waiting to hold water, grain, or oil. Jewelry of faience and copper glitters softly, beads strung into necklaces and bracelets that shine against the pale linen of the passers-by. Baskets overflow with fruits, grapes, figs, dates, pomegranates. Wild bundles of herbs release their fragrance as hands brush against them. The marketplace is a garden of colors and scents, a place where the senses awaken even as the spirit relaxes. The voices here are many, but they rise not in chaos, rather in harmony, like the gentle hum of bees in a summer field. Merchants call softly, offering their wares. Buyers respond with quiet words, bargaining with patience and smiles rather than shouts. Children weave between the stalls, their laughter adding a light note to the music of the market. Musicians stand at corners, plucking strings, blowing flutes, tapping drums in rhythms that guide the steps of those who pass. The air shimmers with warmth and sound, yet carries no sharpness. Only the calm of people moving together in shared life. In one corner of the market, a weaver sits at her loom, her fingers moving with steady grace as she creates a length of linen, the threads crossing under her touch, the fabric growing slowly but surely. Nearby, another weaver sells finished garments, tunics of pale linen, belts dyed with faint colors, simple cloaks for the cooler nights. The cloth catches the light, soft and flowing, as buyers lift it gently, feeling its smoothness between their fingers. The weaver smiles, proud not only of her work, but of the way it connects her to those who will wear it, turning her labor into comfort, her patience into beauty. Not far away, a baker tends his oven, the flames glowing softly within its rounded clay walls. He slides loaves inside with practiced motions, their scent drifting outward to draw a small crowd. The bread emerges, warm and golden, its crust crackling, its interior soft. Some loaves are sprinkled with seeds, others plain, but all are welcome, for bread is the heart of every meal. Buyers carry them away in baskets, their faces lit with satisfaction, knowing that this simple food, so ordinary yet so vital, will nourish their families through another day beyond the stalls of food and clothing. Craftsmen display their art. A jeweler shapes beads from faience, their bright blues and greens reflecting the colors of the Nile and the fields. A potter arranges jars of many sizes, their surfaces polished, smooth, some painted with delicate designs of birds, lotus flowers, or flowing water. A carpenter leans upon his tools, showing wooden stools and chests, simple in form yet strong, crafted with care that promises years of use. Each craft is more than work, it is devotion, an offering of skill passed down through generations, each piece carrying the touch of its maker. The marketplace is also a place of meeting, of gathering, of connection. Friends pause to greet one another, exchanging news, asking after families. Priests walk quietly among the people, offering blessings. Their presence a reminder that the gods watch over every act of trade, every word spoken. Scribes sit with their palettes of ink and brushes, recording transactions for those who cannot write, their careful marks preserving the memory of agreements. The act of writing itself feels sacred, a bridge between fleeting words and enduring truth. As the day moves forward, the sun climbs higher and the market shifts into a slower rhythm. Merchants rest in the shade of their awnings, sipping cool water from jars. Children grow tired, sitting quietly with figs in their hands. The music softens, the conversations grow quieter, the hum of the market easing into a gentle murmur. Yet even in its calmest moments, the marketplace remains alive, a reflection of the Nile itself, ever flowing, steady, patient when the sun begins its slow descent. Shadows stretch once more across the streets. The market gradually empties, goods are packed away, mats rolled up, jars lifted into baskets. Families return to their homes, their arms carrying the fruits of the day. The air grows cooler, touched by the first breath of evening. And though the market closes, its spirit lingers in the bread that will be broken at supper, in the garments that will be worn tomorrow, in the beads and jars that will decorate homes for years to come. To walk through an Egyptian town, to stand in its marketplace, was to feel the pulse of life itself, not loud, not rushed, but steady, calm, woven into every exchange, every gesture, every smile. The towns and cities of Egypt were places of work and trade, yes, but they were also places of rest, of connection, of community. In their lanes and squares, one could hear not only the voices of people, but the whisper of eternity, carried in the rhythm of daily life, in the flow of the river, in the turning of the stars. As you rest in this vision, imagine yourself seated in the shade of a cloth awning, a piece of warm bread in your hands, the sound of music drifting through the air, the murmur of voices surrounding you, the scent of herbs and flowers close by. Let that peace settle into you, as soft as linen, as steady as the Nile. Soon we will wander even further, into the festivals of the night, the laughter of families gathered in courtyards, the endless sky stretching above the desert. But for now, stay here, in the calm of the marketplace, breathing in its harmony, drifting with its rhythm, carried deeper into rest. As the last light of the sun faded into the western horizon, Egypt slipped into its nightly calm. The golden glow that had bathed the walls and rooftops softened into dusky rose, then into deep blue, until at last the stars appeared, clear and countless above the wide desert. The Nile shimmered in the twilight, reflecting the heavens, its waters dark, yet alive with the silver of the moon. In the cities and towns, life slowed, softened, as though the whole land exhaled at once, settling into a deep, shared rest. The marketplace, which only hours before had been filled with voices, now lay quiet. Mats were rolled, stalls were empty, and the scent of herbs and bread lingered faintly in the cool evening air. The streets, still warm from the day, now carried only the soft tread of feet as families returned home. Lamps glowed faintly in doorways, their light golden and flickering, casting long shadows across the mud-brick walls. From within the courtyards came the low murmur of conversation, the laughter of a child, the occasional bark of a dog, or the bray of a donkey settling into its pen. In wealthier homes, oil lamps burned longer, their flames dancing against walls decorated with painted scenes of gods and flowers. Servants carried trays of food or poured jars of beer, their movements quiet and graceful. In simpler homes, a single lamp lit the room, its light enough to bring family close together, faces glowing in its warmth. Bread was broken, water poured, bowls of lentils shared. Supper was not a grand event, but a gathering of hearts, an ending to the day's labors, a return to the stillness of home. Beyond the homes, the Nile itself held its own life at night. Fishermen guided their boats quietly across the water, the sound of oars dipping steady into the current. Lanterns, small and steady, floated on the surface, their light mirrored in the ripples. The air was cooler here, scented with water and reeds, the calls of night birds echoing gently across the banks. To sit by the river at night was to feel part of something eternal, to watch the reflection of the stars and know that the same stars had shone over countless generations before. The Nile carried not just water, but memory, and its song at night was as soft as a lullaby. Children, after a day of laughter and play, grew drowsy quickly under the night sky. They lay curled upon mats, their small limbs folded, their breathing even. Mothers hummed soft songs, their voices no louder than the breeze that stirred the palms. Fathers whispered prayers, asking for protection through the night, for safe sleep, for the promise of tomorrow. In this quiet, the home became a sanctuary, holding dreams as gently as the earth held seeds. Yet not all of Egypt slept at once. In the temples, priests moved silently through the shadows, tending the statues of the gods even in the darkness. Lamps burned in sacred halls, incense released its fragrance into the night, and hymns were whispered, reminding the people that the gods never rested, that their care extended through all hours. In the stillness of the desert, their voices seemed to float, mingling with the stars, echoing across eternity. Some nights brought festivals, when the calm of evening turned into a celebration of light. Torches blazed along the streets, music played deep into the night. Dancers moved with the rhythm of drums, and laughter filled the air. Boats floated upon the Nile, glowing with lanterns, their reflections shimmering upon the water. These nights were rare, yet unforgettable, reminding the people of the joy that life could bring, of the blessings of the gods, of the beauty of existence. But most nights were quiet, soft, filled with the gentle harmony of rest. The desert beyond the villages was a sea of silence. Its sands glowed faintly under the moon, stretching endlessly, vast and eternal. Few ventured far at night, for the desert was both beautiful and unforgiving. Yet from the rooftops of homes, people gazed out across it, their eyes lifted to the horizon, feeling the stillness, the vastness, the peace that came with such boundless space. To them, the desert was not emptiness, but a reminder of eternity, of the vastness of the God's creation. of the endless journey of life and death. And always, above, the stars shone with unmatched brilliance. Constellations told their stories. Orion, seen as Osiris; Sirius, the bright star of Isis; the Milky Way, a celestial reflection of the Nile itself. People looked upward and saw not only beauty but meaning, a map of myth and memory, a sky alive with stories. To sleep beneath those stars was to rest beneath the gaze of the gods, to feel protected, to feel small yet cherished in the vastness of creation. As the night deepened, lamps burned low. Homes grew silent, the last whispers fading into dreams. The city, once alive with footsteps and voices, now lay hushed, its walls bathed in silver moonlight. The Nile flowed on, patient and eternal, its waters gliding quietly toward the sea. Egypt slept, held gently by the desert, the river, and the stars. And as you close your eyes now, imagine yourself lying upon a woven mat on the rooftop of an Egyptian home. The air is cool, the stars are endless, the river sings softly in the distance. Your body is at rest, your breath steady, your heart calm. You are part of this eternal night, part of the rhythm of Egypt, part of the timeless flow of life itself. Soon we will wander further into the work of artisans, into the shaping of beauty by hands that found art in every detail of life. But for now, let the peace of this Egyptian night cradle you, as steady and soothing as the Nile, in the soft glow of dawn or the gentle warmth of late afternoon. The streets of Egyptian towns carried the quiet music of work. Beyond the farmers and fishermen, whose lives were bound to the river and the fields, there lived another group of people whose skill shaped the very face of Egypt, its artisans and craftsmen. These were the potters, the weavers, the carvers, the painters, and the builders. Their lives were not grand, but their hands left behind beauty that has endured for thousands of years. And yet, in their daily hours, they worked in small courtyards and shaded workshops, surrounded not by glory but by the simple rhythm of creation. Imagine a potter at his wheel, seated upon a low stool in a shaded corner. His hands are steady, his touch sure, as the clay spins slowly before him. With each careful movement, the formless earth rises and curves, becoming a jar, a bowl, a vessel that will hold water, grain, or oil. Around him, shelves hold finished pieces, some plain and functional, others painted with lotus blossoms or flowing waves. The air is thick with the scent of wet clay, the sound of the wheel turning, the soft hum of the potter's voice as he sings quietly to himself. Each piece he makes is both useful and beautiful, a blending of necessity and art. Nearby, a group of weavers sit at their looms. Their fingers move swiftly, threading strands of flax into linen cloth. The looms creak softly, the fibers rustle, the air fills with the faint scent of plant and dye. Some weavers work on simple garments, tunics for farmers, veils for women, cloth to wrap bread. Others create finer pieces, dyed with soft blues or yellows, destined for the homes of wealthier families or for temple offerings. The linen flows from their hands like water, smooth and cool, each thread carrying the patience of countless hours. In another street, a carpenter shapes wood into stools and chests. The sound of his tools is steady but gentle, the scrape of blade against wood, the soft thud of a mallet. His workshop smells of cedar, imported from distant lands, and of local sycamore and palm. He smooths the surface of a stool, his hands checking the balance, his eyes sharp yet calm. For him, each piece of furniture is not just an object, but a promise of comfort, a place for rest, a chest to guard precious grain or clothing. His work is quiet, steady, unnoticed by the world beyond his street, yet essential to every household. Stone carvers, too, shape their world with patient blows. In the courtyards of larger towns, one might hear the tap of chisels on limestone, the slow shaping of statues, the carving of hieroglyphs into stele. Their labor is harder, more demanding, yet even here there is calm. Dust rises, tools ring softly, and the stone begins to reveal its former figure of a god, a likeness of a noble, a simple marker for a grave. To carve stone is to speak to eternity, and though the carvers themselves lived humble lives, their work carried voices into the farthest reaches of time. Painters, seated in the shade, grind pigments from minerals and plants. Blue from lapis, green from malachite, red from ochre, black from soot. They mix these powders with water, with gum, with patience, and dip their reed brushes into the colors. With steady hands, they decorate pottery, paint wooden coffins, or cover temple walls with scenes of daily life and divine stories. Their work is not loud or hurried, but meditative, a slow layering of line and shade that brings the world to life. To watch them is to feel time soften, each stroke of the brush a heartbeat, each color a song. And then there are the jewelers, their fingers deft as they string beads of faience, stone or glass. Their tables glimmer with tiny treasures, bright blues and greens, soft golds, polished stones that catch the sun. They work with tools no larger than reeds and wires, their eyes focused, their breaths slow. The necklaces, bracelets, and amulets they create are not only adornments, but protections. Charms that ward off misfortune, blessings to carry through life and into the afterlife. Each piece is both delicate and strong, born from earth yet meant to last forever. The life of artisans is not one of luxury. Their homes are simple, their meals plain, their earnings modest. Yet their days are filled with purpose, with creation, with the quiet joy of shaping raw materials into something meaningful. They work with friends and family, sharing laughter and song as they labor, teaching children to thread reeds, to shape clay, to hold tools steady. Skills pass from parent to child, from elder to youth, not with ceremony but with the gentle rhythm of daily tasks. In this way, art becomes not only the pride of Egypt, but the heartbeat of its households. In the great cities, artisans gather in larger workshops, sometimes attached to temples or palaces. Here they work together, creating grand statues, golden jewelry, painted coffins, vast murals. The air hums with the sound of many hands, many voices, each person contributing a part of something greater. Yet even here, the atmosphere is calm, focused, unhurried. The artisans know that their work is sacred, that to shape beauty is to honor the gods, to honor life itself. At the end of the day, these craftsmen return to their homes like everyone else. They eat simple meals, sit with their families, tell stories, watch the stars. But in their hearts they carry the quiet satisfaction of creation, the memory of a jar shaped from clay, of a cloth woven smooth, of a necklace strung with care, of a figure carved into stone. Their hands may ache, their bodies may tire, but their spirits are light. For their work has given something lasting to the world, and as the night falls, the workshops grow silent. The wheel of the potter rests. The loom of the weaver stands still. The chisels of the carvers lie upon the ground. The pigments dry in their jars. Yet the promise of tomorrow remains that once again, under the rising sun, these hands will shape the world anew. Now, as you imagine these artisans at work, the potter's wheel spinning, the weaver's shuttle passing, the carpenter's tools scraping, the jeweler's beads glimmering, let your thoughts slow to their rhythm. Creation is patient, life is steady, beauty is born not in haste, but in gentle persistence. Soon we will wander further into the rhythms of Egyptian festivals of the seasons, into the joy of harvest and the gratitude of feasts. But for now, rest here with the artisans, in the calm of their workshops, and let their steady hands guide you deeper into peace. The life of Egypt flowed with the Nile, and with it came the rhythm of the seasons. The people did not mark their days with calendars as we do now, but with the rising and falling of the river, with the smell of wet soil after the floods, with the sight of fields turning from brown to green. To them, each season was a gift, each harvest a blessing, each cycle of the river a reminder that life was steady, eternal, and guided by unseen hands. Festivals arose from these rhythms, gentle celebrations that honored both the gods and the land itself. The year in Egypt was divided into 3 great seasons: the season of flooding, the season of planting, and the season of harvest. Each season carried its own pace, its own colors, its own quiet joys. When the Nile began to swell in summer, rising higher with each passing day, the people watched with reverence. The floods were not feared, they were welcomed, for they brought the rich black silt that would feed the crops. Families stood at the riverbank, pointing to the waters, whispering prayers of thanks to Hopi, the god of the Nile, whose gift of fertility sustained them. Children laughed as the water spread into the fields, their voices mingling with the sound of the river, as though they too were part of its song. When the floods receded, leaving the land damp and dark, the season of planting began. Men and women worked side by side, guiding oxen to pull plows, scattering seeds with careful hands, pressing them gently into the earth. The air smelled of wet soil and hope. Birds circled overhead, calling out as they swooped low over the fields. Farmers spoke softly to one another, their voices calm, their movements steady, each act carrying the promise of life renewed. In the evenings, when the work was done, families gathered to share simple meals, their hearts light with the knowledge that the earth was once again fertile, that the gods had blessed their labor. And then, when the months had passed and the fields had grown tall with grain, came the season of harvest. The air was golden, filled with the rustling of stalks, the warmth of the sun upon the land. Families moved through the fields together, cutting the grain with curved sickles, gathering it into bundles, singing softly as they worked. Their songs were not hurried but flowing, rising and falling like the breeze, carrying gratitude as much as rhythm. The grain was threshed, the chaff blown away, the harvest stored in great jars. This was a time of relief, of joy, of celebration. The gods had been kind, the river had been generous, and the land had yielded enough to sustain them once more. Each of these seasons was marked by festivals, moments when the village paused from work to honor the divine. During the flood season, processions carried images of Hopi through the streets, decorated with flowers and garlands. People poured libations of water at shrines, symbolizing the gift of the river. Children wore wreaths of lotus flowers, their petals glowing white and blue against the sun. The air was alive with music, with flutes and drums echoing across the fields, with laughter, with joy in the planting season. Offerings were made to Osiris, lord of the afterlife and of fertility, who taught humanity to farm. Small statues of the god were planted with barley seeds, watched carefully as they sprouted, symbols of rebirth and renewal. Families sang hymns, thanking Osiris for the promise of growth, for the cycle that returned each year. Women placed loaves of bread upon the altars, men poured beer, children added flowers, each act of giving a quiet reminder that life was sacred. The harvest festival was perhaps the most joyful of all. Families feasted together, sharing bread, fruits, fish, and sweet cakes made with honey. Songs rose high into the night, dancers swirled beneath the stars, and laughter echoed in the courtyards. Offerings of grain were carried to the temples, given back to the gods in gratitude. The air was filled with light torches, glowing, lamps burning, stars shining above. For a time, the worries of labor faded, replaced by the calm joy of abundance, of community, of life well lived. Even the smallest gestures carried weight during these times. A child placing a single fig at a shrine, a mother lighting a lamp in honor of Isis, a father whispering a prayer as he held a sickle in his hand. Each act was part of the greater whole, a thread in the tapestry of devotion. The festivals were not only about the gods, but about the people themselves, about their connection to the land, to one another, to the flow of time. Imagine an evening at the end of harvest. The air is warm but soft, touched by the coolness of night. Families gather in a wide courtyard, their mats spread out, their baskets filled with food. Musicians play slowly, the sound of flutes rising like a gentle breeze. Children clap in rhythm, their faces glowing with joy. Elders tell stories of past harvests, of ancestors who lived and worked as they do now. The stars shine above, the Nile flows steady nearby, and the people feel both small and infinite, part of a cycle that has no beginning and no end. For the Egyptians, these festivals of the seasons were more than celebrations. They were reminders that life itself was sacred, that every breath, every grain, every drop of water was a gift. They taught patience, gratitude, and the comfort of belonging to something greater than oneself. And so, year after year, generation after generation, the people of Egypt lived in harmony with the river, with the land, with the gods. Their hearts steady, their lives peaceful, their dreams filled with hope now. As you imagine these festivals, the garlands of flowers, the songs of gratitude, the joy of feasts beneath the stars, let your thoughts drift as gently as the Nile. Soon, we will wander again into the quiet corners of Egyptian life, into the tools, the crafts, the daily objects that filled their homes and carried their world. But for now, rest in the calm rhythm of the seasons, steady and eternal, like the flow of the river, carrying you deeper into peace. To truly understand the life of the Egyptians, we must step inside their homes more carefully and look at the objects that filled their days. These were not grand treasures, not the golden statues of kings or the jewels of queens, but simple thingstools for work, vessels for storage, mats for sleeping, amulets for protection. Yet in their simplicity lay beauty, and in their daily use lay the heartbeat of a people who found meaning in even the smallest of details. Imagine a modest Egyptian household at dawn. Light seeps gently through the doorway, falling upon shelves lined with pottery jars. These jars, smooth and cool, hold water drawn from the Nile, grain harvested from the fields, beer brewed from barley, and oil pressed from seeds. Their shapes are varied, tall and narrow for liquids, wide and rounded for grain, but each one is made with care. Its clay molded by steady hands, its surface sometimes decorated with painted lines or flowers. The jars are both practical and beautiful, standing quietly in corners, guardians of the family's sustenance. On woven mats, made from reeds, lie baskets of every shape and size. Some hold figs and dates, their sweetness waiting to be savored. Others hold herbsmin, cumin, coriander, dry yet fragrant, ready to season bread or stew. In larger baskets, clothes are folded, linen soft and pale, smoothed by hands that spun and wove each thread. These baskets, lightweight yet strong, are everywhere in the home, used for carrying, for storing, for keeping life in order. Near the hearth sit the tools of cooking. Clay ovens, small and rounded, glow faintly from embers that remain from the night before. Beside them are grinding stones, their surfaces worn smooth by countless hands that crushed grain into flour. Women kneel before them, pushing the stones back and forth, their arms moving in a rhythm as old as time, their voices humming softly as they work. The sound of stone against stone is steady, almost soothing, like the murmur of the river. The flour, fine and soft, gathers slowly, to be baked into bread, the simplest yet most essential gift of life. Wooden bowls and spoons rest on shelves. Cups carved from stone or shaped from clay wait to be filled with water or beer. Plates are few and simple, for meals are often shared from common bowls. The wood carries the faint scent of youth, smooth beneath the touch, worn gently by time. These objects, though plain, are part of every meal, every gathering, every moment of nourishment. In the sleeping spaces, mats woven from reeds are spread upon the floor. Some families place wooden headrests at one end, curved pieces designed to support the neck as they sleep. To modern eyes they may seem strange, yet to the Egyptians they were comfort, lifting the head, cooling the body through the night. Linen sheets, light and soft, are draped across the mats, offering rest beneath the warm air of Egypt's evenings. Children curled together beneath them, parents close by, the home filled with the quiet sound of breathing, of dreams. Jewelry, though often simple, is part of daily life too. Beads of faience, their colors bright blue and green, are strung into necklaces. Copper bracelets gleam faintly in the light. Amulets shaped like scarabs, eyes, or small gods hang around necks, believed to bring protection and luck. These are not treasures locked away, but objects worn each day, reminders of the sacred woven into the ordinary. Symbols of care and connection, tools of work rest near the doors, ready for use with the rising sun. Sickles with flint blades for harvesting grain, fishing nets carefully mended and folded, baskets for carrying loads from field to home. A plough, simple yet strong, waits for the ox to be yoked. Each tool is well used, its surface bearing marks of labor, yet each one is cared for, repaired when broken, passed down when old. They are companions of work, partners in survival, part of the bond between human hands and the earth. In another corner, toys lie scattered. A wooden doll, its hair made from threads of string. A small clay animal, its shape rough, but loved. Pebbles and sticks arranged in patterns from yesterday's games. To the adults, these are small things. To the children, they are treasures, objects of imagination, of laughter, of comfort. In some homes, writing boards and reed pens can be found. Not every family owns them. These belong often to scribes, or to those who wish to teach their children. Small palettes hold black and red ink, brushes carved from reeds rest nearby. On potsherds or scraps of papyrus, marks are made, words written, lessons practiced. These tools carry not only ink but knowledge, and with them, memory is preserved. The walls of the homes themselves hold meaning, sometimes painted with simple designs, flowers, birds, or geometric patterns. They brighten the rooms, turning plain mud brick into spaces of beauty. On shelves, small figurines of gods or protective spirits stand watch. A carving of Base with his smiling, fierce face. A small statue of Tauret, the hippopotamus goddess, guarding mothers and children. These objects are not grand idols, but companions of faith, present in daily life, part of the family's sense of safety and hope. Outside, tools of agriculture rest beneath awnings, baskets for carrying soil, hoes for turning earth, ropes for guiding oxen. Simple objects, yet without them, the rhythm of farming would falter. The Egyptians did not separate the sacred from the practical. To use these tools was itself an act of devotion, part of the cycle of life sustained by the gods. At night, when lamps are lit, these objects seem to glow with a gentle presence. The jars hold the promise of tomorrow's meals. The mats wait to cradle tired bodies. The jewelry lies upon shelves, ready to be worn again. The tools rest, their work complete for the day. In their stillness, they remind us of the lives they serve, of the people who touch them, of the quiet dignity of ordinary days. To walk through an Egyptian home, to touch these objects, is to feel the closeness of its people. Their lives were not filled with riches, yet they were rich in the small things that carried love, care, and meaning. Every jar, every basket, every tool was part of a story, part of a family, part of the steady flow of life beside the Nile. And as you imagine these objects now, the cool clay jars, the woven mats, the smooth wooden spoons, the tiny amulets that glimmer in the lamplight, let yourself drift into their rhythm. Simple, steady, quiet, they hold the essence of life itself. Soon we will move further into the joys of music and entertainment, into the songs, dances, and games that filled Egypt with delight. But for now, rest with these objects, these companions of daily life, and let their calm presence carry you gently into sleep. Among all the rhythms of daily life in ancient Egypt, the work in the fields, the prayers in the temples, the stillness of the night there was also joy expressed through music, dance, and play. These moments of entertainment did not disturb the calm of life, but added to it, weaving lightness and delight into the steady pattern of existence. To the Egyptians, music was more than sound. It was a bridge to the divine, a balm for the heart, a companion to both labor and rest. Picture a warm afternoon in a village courtyard. The air is quiet after the tasks of the morning, and children sit in the shade, their eyes following the gentle strumming of a musician's lute. The instrument, small and wooden, glows in the sunlight as its strings vibrate, sending soft notes into the air. The melody is simple, unhurried, and yet it carries a sweetness that settles the heart. Around the musician, neighbors gather, some clapping softly, others humming along, their voices blending with the strings until the sound becomes more than music. It becomes a shared calm, a communal breath. Flutes carved from reeds are also common, their tones high and clear, like the voices of birds calling across the fields. In the hands of skilled players, they sing of rivers and skies, of love and longing, of joy and peace. Children laugh as they try to mimic the sound, their attempts shrill and uneven, yet filled with delight. Drums, too, join the harmony skins, stretched tight across wooden frames, struck with gentle hands to create rhythms that echo the heartbeat itself. Together, lute, flute, and drum create a tapestry of sound, one that is as much a part of daily life as the Nile itself. Dance often followed music, though it was never frantic or harsh. Instead, it flowed like water, graceful and slow, with movements that mirrored the cycles of nature. Women moved their arms like the swaying of reeds, their steps light as though walking upon the surface of the river. Their bracelets jingled softly, their anklets chimed in rhythm, creating music of their own. Men sometimes joined, clapping hands or stepping in time, their laughter gentle, their joy easy. These dances were not performances for strangers, but offerings of happiness shared among family, friends, and neighbors. Festivals, of course, brought larger gatherings. In open squares or near temples, groups of dancers and musicians filled the air with life. Harps, tall and elegant, were played, their strings shimmering under the hands of musicians. Cymbals clashed softly, tambourines jingled, flutes and lutes joined, and drums guided the rhythm. Dancers moved in patterns, some slow and reverent, honoring the gods. Others lively and bright, celebrating harvests and feasts. The people watched, clapped, and sometimes joined, their hearts lifted, their spirits brightened. Even the gods, it was believed, were pleased by music and dance, smiling upon those who created joy in their name. But music and dance were not limited to festivals. They accompanied work, easing the labor of grinding grain or weaving cloth. Women sang as they kneaded dough, their voices rising and falling like waves, their songs teaching children lessons or remembering ancestors. Men hummed as they guided oxen through the fields, their low tones steady, keeping pace with the plow. Even in the temples, music was ever present. Hymns were sung to Ra as the sun rose, to Osiris as seeds were planted, to Hathor, goddess of music and joy, in moments of celebration. To live in Egypt was to live in a world where music flowed through every task, every prayer, every gathering. Children had their own games, filled with rhythm and laughter. They clapped hands in patterns, their voices chanting songs that had been passed down for generations. They played catch with small balls made of papyrus fiber, tossed sticks in games of chance, or raced barefoot across courtyards, their laughter ringing like bells. Dolls and carved animals became companions in play, while older children tried their hand at wrestling or balancing acts. These games were simple, yet they carried the same calm joy as the music and dance of adults never harsh. Always light, always filled with warmth. Storytelling, too, was a form of entertainment and often accompanied music. A storyteller would strum a lute or beat a drum softly while weaving tales of gods, of heroes, of love and mystery. His voice rose and fell in rhythm with the notes, carrying listeners into worlds beyond their own. Children leaned forward, wide-eyed, while adults closed their eyes, letting the words flow through them like a dream. These moments, half story and half song, were the heart of Egyptian evenings, where imagination and memory mingled, and where the past lived again in the present, even in the afterlife. The Egyptians believed music and joy would endure. Tomb paintings show musicians and dancers, instruments and games, reminding the soul that even beyond death there would be laughter, song, and celebration. To them, joy was eternal. a gift carried into every world, never lost. Now, imagine yourself in one of these courtyards, the sound of a lute filling the air, the rhythm of a drum steady as your breath, the laughter of children close by, the stars beginning to shine above. The music is slow, soothing, endless. It drifts around you, through you, carrying you gently into stillness. Soon, we will wander further into the closing rhythms of Egyptian life, into how they marked time, remembered their dead, and prepared for tomorrow. But for now, let the music linger in your mind, soft and steady, guiding you deeper into peace. In ancient Egypt, time was not rushed, nor was it measured by the ticking of clocks. It flowed gently, like the Nile itself, steady and eternal, shaping lives without hurry. The people of Egypt lived not by minutes or hours, but by the rhythms of the sun, the moon, and the river. Each day unfolded slowly, guided by the warmth of dawn, the brightness of noon, the coolness of evening, and the stillness of night. To them, time was not a thing to chase, but a gift to receive, a steady companion that whispered softly of eternity. The rising of the sun was the first marker of the day. As Ra, the sun god, began his journey across the sky, light spilled across the desert and the river, waking both people and animals. The golden horizon signaled the beginning of labor, the tending of fields, the drawing of water, the opening of markets. No bells rang, no harsh calls echoed, only the gentle light itself, a soft invitation to begin. The sun was their greatest clock, its position in the sky telling them when to work, when to rest, when to return home. At midday, when the sun stood directly overhead, its heat pressing firmly upon the earth, time seemed to pause. Shadows grew short, the air shimmered with warmth, and life slowed. Farmers rested beneath the shade of palms, children napped in courtyards, animals lay still in their pens. This was not idleness, but balance. The people of Egypt understood that even the day itself needed a moment of rest. The silence of midday was as sacred as the songs of morning. Evening came as the sun descended toward the western horizon, painting the sky with amber and rose. To the Egyptians, this was more than the end of the day. It was a symbol of Ra's journey into the underworld, a reminder that all things pass, only to return again with dawn. Families gathered for meals, lamps were lit, stories were told. Time was marked not by numbers, but by moments, by the taste of bread, the sound of laughter, the flicker of firelight, the cool touch of night air, and then the night itself. Under the stars, the people of Egypt felt the vastness of eternity. The constellations told their own stories, marking the seasons, guiding travelers, shaping festivals. The moon waxed and waned, its phases a gentle calendar in the sky. Priests watched carefully, noting the passage of days, aligning rituals with the heavens. Yet for ordinary families, the night was simply a time of rest, of dreams, of trust in the eternal rhythm of life. The Egyptians also created ways to measure time more closely, though always in harmony with nature. Sundials, placed in courtyards or temple grounds, cast shadows that moved gently across marked stones. From these shadows, they could tell the progress of the day, the steady turning of light into shade. Water clocks, too, were crafted simple vessels with small holes that allowed water to drip slowly, steadily, from one jar into another. The sound of water falling, drop by drop, measured the passing of hours, soft as a heartbeat, calm as a breath. Yet even with these tools, time in Egypt never felt sharp or hurried. The The people did not rush to catch it, nor fear its loss. They lived within it, as one lives within the flow of a river, carried gently forward. To plant seeds was to trust in the future. To harvest grain was to honor the past. To share a meal was to dwell in the present. Past, present, and future flowed together, inseparable, like the Nile winding endlessly toward the sea. Festivals, too, marked the passing of time. Each season brought its own celebrations: the flooding of the Nile, the planting of crops, the gathering of harvest. These events were more than markers of the year. They were reminders that time itself was a cycle, repeating, renewing, eternal. To dance at a harvest festival was to remember past abundance and to hope for future gifts. To sing hymns during the flood was to honor the steady hand of the gods, guiding each year as gently as the river guided its banks, even death. To the Egyptians was not the end of time. It was a passage, a crossing, a continuation in another realm. They believed that the soul would move into the afterlife, where time stretched into eternity, where joy and music and rest would last forever. This belief gave them peace, allowed them to live each day without fear, to accept the flow of time as a blessing, not a burden. Imagine standing in an Egyptian courtyard as the day passes. In the morning, the sun warms your face, the air is cool, the voices of neighbors rise with the dawn. By midday, the heat slows you, urging you to rest, to pause, to breathe. In the evening, lamps glow softly, families gather, laughter mingles with song. At night, the stars shine, endless and calm, their light carrying you into dreams. This is how the Egyptians lived, in rhythm, in harmony, in peace with the flow of time. And so, when we think of them, we should not imagine a people bound by ticking clocks or rushing hours, but a people who walked gently in step with the river, the sun, the stars. Their time was eternal, their days both fleeting and forever. Their lives lived slowly, deeply, with gratitude. As you rest now, imagine yourself carried by that same rhythm. The sun rises, the sun sets, the stars shine, the river flows. There is no hurry, no pressure, only the steady passage of time, as soothing as the Nile itself. Soon, we will wander further into how the Egyptians remembered their loved ones, how they honored ancestors, and how memory itself became part of daily life. But for now, let the gentle flow of time settle within you, carrying you softly into peace. In the heart of Egyptian life, memory was sacred. To remember was to keep alive, and to honor the past was to guide the present. The Egyptians did not see death as an end, but as a passage, a quiet doorway that led from one form of life into another. And so, they filled their days with gentle acts of remembrance, with rituals and offerings, with whispers of names and songs of praise, so that those who had passed before them would never be lost. Imagine stepping into a small courtyard at dusk. The air is cool, the sky painted with soft colors of rose and gold, and in the corner of the courtyard stands a small shrine. Upon it lies a loaf of bread, a jug of beer, perhaps a few dates or figs. A small flame flickers in a clay lamp, its glow steady against the walls. These offerings are not for the living, but for those who came before: parents, for grandparents, for ancestors whose names are spoken aloud as the family gathers. To the Egyptians, this act was more than custom. It was love, woven into daily life, a bond that crossed the boundary of time in temples. The honoring of ancestors took grander form. Priests recited hymns, their voices rising in steady chants that echoed against stone walls. Statues of kings and queens were washed, clothed, and adorned with flowers, as though they still lived, as though their presence lingered in the air. Incense drifted upward, carrying prayers toward the heavens, while the people bowed their heads, not in fear but in reverence. To them, the past was not gone, it was alive in the air they breathed, in the rituals they performed, in the names they remembered. Names, above all, were vital. To speak a person's name was to keep their soul alive, to anchor them in memory. Families taught children the names of their ancestors, repeating them like songs, ensuring they would never be forgotten. Tombs were inscribed with names, carved deeply into stone, so that even as the body returned to earth, the memory would remain. For the Egyptians, the worst fate was not death itself, but being forgotten. To remember was to protect, to care, to love across eternity, even in the simplest homes. Where wealth was scarce, remembrance was present. A family might place a small clay figure of a loved one upon a shelf, or whisper a prayer before a meal. They might carry an amulet that once belonged to a parent, or keep a lock of hair, a piece of cloth, a memory held not in grandeur but in tenderness. These small gestures were as powerful as the grandest tombs, for they carried the essence of love. The great tombs of Egypt, with their painted walls and carved inscriptions, were not built only for the dead, but for the living as well. To walk into a tomb was to step into memory, to see painted scenes of farming, of feasting, of music, of hunting. These images reminded the living that their loved ones continued these joys in the afterlife, that life itself was eternal. The walls spoke not only to the spirits, but to the families who visited, assuring them that nothing was truly lost. Festivals of remembrance were held throughout the year. Families traveled to the tombs of their ancestors, carrying baskets of food and jars of beer. They sat together near the resting places, sharing meals, telling stories, laughing softly. In these moments, the boundary between living and dead grew thin, and the presence of the ancestors was felt as surely as the warmth of the sun. Children learned stories of those who came before them, their hearts filled with pride, their voices carrying names that would echo into the future. Even work carried remembrance. A farmer ploughing his field might whisper his father's name, dedicating the labor to him. A mother weaving linen might remember her grandmother's hands, guiding her own. A scribe, writing on papyrus, might recall the teacher who first showed him the brush. Memory was not confined to ceremonies. It lived in every act, every gesture, every touch of daily life. To the Egyptians, remembrance also meant respect. Elders were honored not only in death, but in life. Their wisdom was sought, their words listened to, their presence cherished. Children were taught to bow their heads, to listen, to learn, to care for those who had lived many years. In families, the voices of the old were treasures, carrying the stories of generations, holding the memory of the past. Imagine now a quiet evening by the Nile. A family sits together, the stars bright above, the river flowing steady nearby. The eldest among them begins to tell a tale of ancestors who lived when the floods were greater, who built canals, who harvested in abundance. The children listen wide-eyed. The parents smile softly. The river hums in the background. In this moment, the past and present are one, woven together by memory, by love, by the simple act of telling and hearing. Even as you close your eyes tonight, you might imagine yourself among them. You hold in your heart the memory of those you love, those who came before you, those whose names are whispered like blessings. In Egypt, memory was not heavy, it was gentle, like the steady flow of water, like the quiet glow of a lamp, like the softness of linen against skin. To remember was to rest in love, to know that nothing is ever truly lost. And so, as Egypt moved through the centuries, it carried with it not only the rhythm of the Nile, the labor of the fields, the joy of festivals, the music of lutes and flutes, but also the calm strength of memory. It was this remembrance, as much as anything, that gave them peace, that allowed them to live slowly, deeply, with gratitude. Now, as you drift further into sleep, imagine yourself placing a small lamp upon a shrine, whispering a name you hold dear, watching the flame flicker gently in the still air. Soon we will wander again into the daily journeys of Egyptian children, their play, their learning, their laughter. But for now, let the calm of memory rest upon you, steady and eternal, carrying you softly into dreams. In the wide and gentle world of ancient Egypt, children held a special place. They were the promise of tomorrow, the joy of families, the laughter that softened even the hardest days of labor. Their lives were simple, yet filled with delight, shaped by games, by learning, by the watchful love of parents and elders. To see Egypt through the eyes of a child is to see a world alive with wonder, where every corner holds a story, every moment a discovery, every day a gift at dawn. When the sun rose softly over the Nile, children stirred from their reed mats, rubbing sleep from their eyes as the air filled with the smell of bread baking in clay ovens. The day stretched before them like an open scroll, ready to be filled with laughter and play. Some helped their parents with small tasks, carrying water jars, feeding animals, gathering herbs. Others slipped quickly into the rhythm of play, their bare feet pattering across courtyards, their voices rising like birds greeting the morning. Their games were simple, yet filled with joy. Small balls, made from papyrus fiber or leather, were tossed back and forth, their path through the air followed by shouts of delight. Sticks were thrown in games of chance, their fall upon the ground determining who would laugh and who would try again. Dolls carved from wood, with hair made of string or clay, became companions for little girls, carried in arms, placed gently upon mats, whispered to as though they were alive. Boys carved tiny animals from clay cows, hippos, birds and marched them in rows, creating worlds of imagination from the simplest of things. Some children played games of skill, balancing on one foot, racing barefoot across the sand, wrestling gently with one another, their laughter ringing in the warm air. Others played near the river, splashing in the shallows, chasing fish that darted like silver streaks beneath the water. Their joy was never harsh or frantic, it flowed gently, as steady as the river itself, woven with laughter and ease. But childhood in Egypt was not only play. Learning, too, was part of life, though it came differently for each child. Many learned by watching their parents' daughters weaving reeds, grinding grain, or tending the household. Sons guiding animals, sowing seeds, shaping wood. Skills were passed not in classrooms, but in courtyards, in fields, in workshops, in the daily acts of living. A child's hands grew skilled by imitating, by practicing, by listening to the wisdom of elders. For some, especially the children of scribes and officials, education took another form. These children sat with wooden writing boards and red pens, learning to form the graceful curves of hieroglyphs, to copy prayers and poems, to calculate numbers. Their days were filled with lessons, their teachers guiding them patiently, though sometimes with firm voices. To learn writing was to step into the world of memory and power, to join the small group of people who could preserve words for eternity. These children often dreamed not of fields or markets, but of scrolls and ink, of temples and courts. Girls, though less often taught formal writing, were no less learners. They absorbed the skills of managing a household, of weaving linen, of preparing food, of caring for younger siblings. Their mothers' voices guided them, soft but steady, teaching not only skills, but wisdom, patience, and strength. In this way, every child grew into their place, their days filled with both innocence and preparation. With play and with learning, children were also surrounded by faith, by the stories of gods and goddesses told to them at night. Mothers whispered prayers to Tauret, the goddess who protected children, placing amulets beside sleeping mats to keep away harm. Fathers pointed to the stars, telling how Osiris ruled the underworld, how Ra traveled across the sky, how Isis watched with love. These stories were more than myths. They were comfort, wrapping children in the knowledge that the gods watched over them, that they were never alone. Festivals brought even greater joy to children's lives. They ran through the streets, their hair adorned with flowers, their hands clutching sweet cakes or small gifts. They watched musicians and dancers with wide eyes, imitating their movements, clapping in rhythm. They gazed at boats glowing with lanterns on the Nile, their hearts filled with wonder at the sight of light upon water. For them, festivals were not only devotion but magic, moments that lived forever in memory. And yet, even in the quietest days, childhood was rich. Imagine a girl sitting in the shade of a palm, braiding reeds into small mats, her fingers moving slowly as she hums to herself. Beside her, a boy shapes a ball of clay, pressing it into the form of a bird, his tongue between his teeth in concentration. In the distance, their mother grinds grain, their father repairs a net, the air filled with sounds of work, but also of peace. These are the threads of childhood, simple, steady, unhurried, filled with small joys and gentle guidance. At night, children curled upon mats, their bodies tired from play, their eyes heavy with dreams. Mothers told them stories of ancient kings, of magical creatures, of journeys through the stars. Fathers placed amulets by their sides, whispered prayers for protection, kissed their brows. The flicker of oil lamps cast soft shadows upon the walls, the air filled with warmth, with safety, with love. And as sleep took them, they dreamed of rivers and fields, of games and laughter, of gods and stories, of a world both vast and kind. Childhood in Egypt was not always easy disease. Labor and loss were part of life. But even within those hardships, families cherished their children, surrounding them with care, with laughter, with the simple joys of play and learning. Their lives were brief but bright, fleeting yet eternal, remembered in stories, preserved in paintings, carried in love now as you drift into rest. Imagine yourself among these children, playing with a clay doll, chasing a ball across a courtyard, listening to a story beneath the stars. The air is warm, the night is calm, the river sings softly in the distance. Soon we will journey further into the quiet beauty of Egyptian gardens, into the shade of palms and the fragrance of lotus flowers. But for now, let the laughter of children guide you gently into dreams. Soft as linen, steady as the Nile, in the wide and sunlit land of ancient Egypt, where the desert stretched endlessly and the river flowed like a silver ribbon. people created small havens of shade and greenery, gardens that soothed the body and calmed the spirit. These gardens were not merely places of beauty. They were sanctuaries designed for rest, for prayer, for joy, and for reflection. To step into an Egyptian garden was to step into another world, one softer than the desert, gentler than the crowded streets. A world where the sound of leaves and the fragrance of flowers created a music of their own. Imagine walking through the doorway of a home in Thebes or Memphis and finding yourself in a quiet courtyard. At its center lies a pool of water, its surface still and shining beneath the sun. Lotus flowers float upon it, their white and blue petals opening toward the sky, their fragrance sweet yet subtle. Fish dart beneath the surface, their movements sending ripples across the water. Around the pool grow date palms and sycamores, their tall trunks casting dappled shade across the courtyard, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze. This pool, this shade, this greenery, together they form the heart of the garden, a place where the family can sit, rest, and breathe. The air in such a garden is cooler, carrying the scent of flowers and damp earth. Rows of vines grow along the walls, heavy with grapes that hang in clusters, their skins glowing in the light. Pomegranates, with their bright blossoms, promise sweetness within. Fig trees spread their wide leaves, offering both fruit and shadow. Herbs grow in neat patches: mint, cumin, coriander, their fragrance rising as one brushes against them. Each plant is chosen with care, each corner of the garden a blend of nourishment and beauty. In wealthier homes, gardens were grander still. Pools were lined with stone, their edges painted with images of lotus blossoms and birds. Columns surrounded the walkways, vines climbing gracefully toward the sky. Exotic trees, brought from distant lands, grew beside the familiar palms and sycamores. Ducks glided across the pools. Geese wandered among the grasses, their soft calls mingling with the murmur of water. These gardens were not only for pleasure, but also for ceremony, for gatherings, for feasts beneath the open sky. The Egyptians saw gardens as reflections of paradise, small pieces of eternity brought into daily life. To them, the gods themselves dwelled in gardens filled with lotus, papyrus, and fruit trees. Paintings in tombs often showed the deceased seated in such gardens, beneath the shade of trees, drinking cool water, eating figs and grapes, listening to birdsong. To rest in a garden was to taste heaven, even before reaching the afterlife. Gardens were also places of prayer. Small shrines often stood among the trees, where families lit lamps, placed flowers, or poured water in honor of the gods. Hathor, goddess of love and joy, was often worshipped here. Her presence felt in the beauty of flowers and the sweetness of fruit. Priests, too, tended temple gardens, growing sacred plants for rituals, lotus for offerings, herbs for incense. These sacred spaces were not noisy with chants or filled with crowds, but quiet, fragrant, and full of stillness. Children played in gardens, their laughter mingling with the rustle of leaves. They floated lotus flowers in pools, chased butterflies among the vines, picked figs and dates with eager hands. Mothers sat nearby, weaving baskets or spinning flax, their eyes soft as they watched. Fathers rested in the shade after the day's work, drinking cool water, their voices gentle as they told stories of the gods. The garden was not just a place of beauty, but a home, a space where life unfolded in peace. Festivals often spilled into gardens, turning them into places of celebration. Musicians played by the pools, dancers moved beneath the trees, families feasted on bread, fruit, and beer. Lanterns glowed among the branches, their light mirrored in the water below. For a night, the garden became alive with sound and joy, yet always with gentleness, always with harmony, as though the plants themselves swayed with the music. But even in ordinary days, the garden held quiet wonders. Birds visited doves, cooing softly, herons standing still by the pools, sparrows darting between vines. The air carried not only fragrance but also song, the sound of water dripping from jars into pools, the rustling of leaves. The chirping of crickets at duskle blended into a lullaby, soothing those who sat within. To close one's eyes in such a place was to feel time slow, to feel the heart soften, to feel the presence of eternity. Imagine now yourself seated by an Egyptian pool, the lotus blossoms open, their petals touching the water. The breeze moves gently through palm leaves, their shadows dancing across the ground. A cup of cool water rests in your hand, its surface reflecting the sky. You breathe in the scent of figs, of grapes, of mint. The air is still, the world hushed, the garden around you alive yet peaceful. In this moment, there is no rush, no burden, only the steady rhythm of life, carried gently by the garden's calm to the Egyptians. These gardens were more than spaces, they were promises. Promises that life was sweet, that rest was sacred, that joy could be found in the shade of trees and the fragrance of flowers. They were reminders of the gods' gifts, of the river's blessings, of the eternity that awaited beyond life. And so, in every pool, in every vine, in every fig and lotus, they found not only beauty but peace. Now, as you close your eyes, imagine the garden around you. Hear the rustle of palm leaves, the call of doves, the trickle of water into the pool. Smell the sweetness of grapes, the coolness of mint, the perfume of lotus flowers. Feel the soft breeze upon your skin, the shade of the trees, the calm of the evening. Soon we will wander further into the sacred spaces of temples, into the prayers and rituals that shaped Egyptian faith. But for now, let the garden hold you, steady and serene, carrying you gently into dreams, in the land of ancient Egypt, where the desert stretched wide and the river flowed steady. Temples rose like mountains of stone. They were not only places of worship, but living hearts of the community, centers where the rhythm of the divine met the rhythm of daily life. To walk into a temple was to step out of the ordinary world and into a space of eternity, where time slowed, where silence spoke, and where every act, however small, was filled with reverence. Imagine approaching a temple at dawn. The sun has only just begun to rise, and its golden light touches the tall pylons, their walls carved with stories of gods and kings. The air is cool, the courtyard still, the only sound the cry of birds circling above. You pass through towering gates, their shadows stretching long, and enter a space where the world seems hushed, where every stone holds the weight of devotion. The courtyards open wide, their flagstones warmed by the first touch of the sun. Columns stand in rows, their surfaces carved with lotus and papyrus, their tops like blooming flowers. The air smells faintly of incense, carried on the breeze from inner chambers. Priests move quietly, their linen garments white and pure, their heads shaved, their steps soft against the stone. Their presence is calm, their faces serene, for their work is sacred, their tasks guided by rituals that have been repeated for centuries. In the inner sanctuaries, where few may enter, the statues of gods rest in silence. They are carved from stone or cast in gold, their faces serene, their eyes watchful. Lamps burn softly before them, their flames flickering, their smoke rising gently toward the ceiling. Each morning, priests wash these statues with cool water, clothe them in fresh linen, and place food and flowers before them. The gods are treated not as distant beings, but as honored guests, cared for with tenderness and devotion. The sound of hymns fills the air, low and steady, rising from the throats of priests in unison. Their words are old, their rhythm gentle, like waves upon the shore. Drums beat softly, flutes play slow melodies, the music wrapping around the stone columns, echoing through the chambers. To stand in such a place is to feel time dissolve, to feel one's heart quiet, to feel a presence greater than oneself. Temples were not only for priests. Families visited too, bringing offerings of bread, beer, flowers, and incense. A mother might kneel with her child, whispering prayers for health, for safety, for the blessings of Hathor or Isis. A farmer might place a small bundle of grain at the shrine, asking Osiris to bless the fields. A fisherman might pour water in honor of Hopi, thanking him for the gift of the river. These acts were simple, yet each carried weight, each a thread in the great fabric of faith. Festivals made the temples alive with color and sound. Processions carried statues of gods out of sanctuaries, their images placed upon boats or carried through the streets. Priests and musicians walked together, the air filled with the scent of flowers and incense, the sound of drums and sistrums. People followed joyfully, clapping, singing, offering prayers as the gods moved among them. These moments were both sacred and celebratory, blending devotion with delight, weaving the divine into the fabric of everyday life. Even the architecture of temples whispered peace. Pools of water lay within courtyards, reflecting the sky, symbolizing creation itself. Gardens grew near the walls, filled with lotus and papyrus, their fragrance drifting into the stone halls. The walls themselves were covered with carvings, images of the Nile, of fields, of gods, of kings, each detail reminding the visitor of the balance between earth and heaven. To walk through a temple was to walk through a vision of eternity, each step leading deeper into calm. For the priests, life within the temple was one of devotion and discipline. Their days began before dawn, with purification in cool water, with prayers whispered as the stars still shone. They prepared offerings, tended lamps, recited hymns, wrote records. Their voices echoed softly in the stone halls, their movements precise, their hearts steady. To them, each act, whether lighting a lamp or sweeping a floor, was sacred, part of the endless rhythm of honoring the gods. At night, the temples did not sleep. Lamps continued to burn, their flames steady, their glow warm against the carvings. The statues rested in silence, yet their presence filled the air. Outside, the desert stretched wide, the stars glittered above, and the Nile flowed steady. Inside, the calm of the temple remained, timeless, eternal, holding the prayers of countless voices, carrying them upward like smoke rising toward the sky. Imagine now yourself within one of these sacred spaces. You walk slowly across the cool stone, the air around you filled with the faint scent of incense, the sound of soft hymns echoing. Light filters through small openings, painting patterns upon the floor. A priest passes by, his steps silent, his eyes lowered in reverence. You place a small lotus flower upon a shrine, its petals glowing white against the shadow. In that moment, you feel the calm of eternity, the peace of devotion, the stillness of the gods. Temples in Egypt were not distant from life, they were part of it. They reminded people that the divine walked among them, that the gods cared for their fields, their children, their homes. They offered not fear, but comfort, not distance, but closeness. And in their stone halls, amid the fragrance of incense and the flicker of lamps, people found peace, rest, and hope. Now, as you drift further into calm, imagine the temple's stillness surrounding you. The pillars rise high, the carvings whisper stories, the lamps glow softly. You are safe, you are at peace, you are part of the rhythm of eternity. Soon, we will wander further into the world of Egyptian food and feasts, into the flavors and scents that filled their days. But for now, let the quiet of the temple cradle you, steady and serene, carrying you gently into sleep. In ancient Egypt, food was not only nourishment, but also comfort, connection, and gratitude. Meals were not hurried affairs. They unfolded slowly, like the gentle current of the Nile, bringing families together, filling homes with fragrance, and reminding everyone of the blessings of the land. To sit at an Egyptian table was to experience simplicity woven with richness, the taste of earth and river, of grain and fruit, of life itself. The foundation of every meal was bread, grain, grown in the black soil after the Nile's floods, was ground on stone quans. The steady rhythm of grinding echoing softly through courtyards. Flour mixed with water became dough, shaped by careful hands, baked in clay ovens that glowed warmly in the early morning. The scent of fresh bread drifted through the air, filling homes with a sweetness both ordinary and sacred. Some loaves were plain, others sprinkled with seeds, still others shaped into small cakes flavored with honey or dates. To eat bread was to taste the earth's generosity, to feel the blessings of Osiris, who taught the people to farm. Beer, too, was central to daily life. Brewed from barley, it was thick, nourishing, and sweet, a drink that sustained as much as it refreshed. Families prepared it in their homes, fermenting grain with water and dates, straining it through cloth, pouring it into jars. Its flavor was mild, its strength gentle, a companion to bread, to work, to celebration. To sip beer in the shade of a courtyard was to rest in the rhythm of the land, to share in a drink that bound community together. Vegetables grew in abundance along the Nile's banks. Onions and leeks, garlic and lettuce, cucumbers and beanzol found their way to Egyptian tables. Their flavors were simple, earthy, fresh, carrying the taste of fertile soil. They were eaten raw, boiled in stews, or roasted over coals, their fragrance rising into the evening air. Fruit added sweetness to the diet: figs, soft and honeyed, dates, rich and chewy, grapes bursting with juice, pomegranates glowing with red seeds like jewels. These were not luxuries but blessings, eaten with gratitude, shared among family, offered to the gods. Fish from the Nile was another gift. Fishermen cast nets at dawn and returned with baskets of tilapia, perch, or catfish. These were roasted, salted, or dried in the sun, their flavor carrying the freshness of the river. Meat was rarer in ordinary homes, but poultry, duck, goose, or quail sometimes graced the table, especially during festivals. Cattle, goats, and sheep were more often raised for milk or labor, but on special occasions their meat was prepared with spices, roasted slowly, filling the air with savory fragrance. Meals were eaten in courtyards or simple rooms, not at high tables, but seated on mats or low stools. Bowls and plates of pottery or wood held the food, Cups carved from clay or stone carried beer and water. Families gathered close, children sitting beside parents, neighbors sometimes joining, everyone sharing from common dishes. The air was filled, not with noise, but with gentle conversation, laughter, the soft sound of hands breaking bread, the murmur of gratitude to the gods. In wealthier homes, meals could be elaborate feasts. Long tables were laid with many dishes bread of different shapes, fruits arranged in baskets, roasted meats, bowls of stews flavored with garlic and herbs, cakes sweetened with honey. Musicians played softly in the background, servants poured wine, dancers moved gracefully to entertain the guests. Yet even here, the mood was not frantic but flowing, a celebration of life's abundance, a reminder of divine generosity. Festivals brought even greater abundance. At harvest, families shared the best of their grain, their fruits, their beer. Cakes, shaped like animals, were baked, honey drizzled upon them, their sweetness a symbol of joy. During religious festivals, food was offered first to the gods and then shared among the people, turning meals into acts of devotion. The temples themselves became places of feasting, their courtyards filled with laughter, music, and the fragrance of roasted meats and fresh bread. But even in ordinary days, food carried meaning. To share bread with a neighbor was to strengthen friendship. To place bread and beer at a shrine was to honor the gods. To leave food at a tomb was to remember the dead, to keep their spirits nourished in the afterlife. Every loaf, every fig, every jug of beer carried both nourishment and blessing, both comfort and love. Children found joy in food too. They nibbled on dates, their fingers sticky with sweetness. They munched on cucumbers pulled fresh from the garden, their crunch echoing in the quiet air. They sipped watered beer or cool water from jars, their laughter bright as they ate. For them, food was not only sustenance but delight, a simple pleasure woven into the rhythms of play and rest. Imagine now a family gathered in their courtyard at dusk. The lamps glow softly, casting golden light upon the walls. A loaf of bread sits in the center, its crust warm and fragrant. Bowls of lentils, beans, and onions surround it, their steam rising gently into the air. A jug of beer rests nearby, cool and sweet. Children laugh as they reach for figs. Parents smile as they break bread. Neighbors share in the meal. The air is filled with warmth, with comfort, with peace to the Egyptians. Food was never rushed. It was savored, appreciated, honored. Each meal was a pause in the day, a moment of connection, a reminder that life was abundant, that the gods were generous, that community was sacred. And so, day after day, year after year, the bread was baked, the beer brewed, the figs gathered, the meals shared. Life flowed gently, like the river itself, carrying with it the fragrance of food and the warmth of family. Now, as you drift into sleep, imagine yourself seated at that courtyard meal. The bread is warm in your hands, the figs sweet upon your tongue, the beer cool upon your lips. Around you, laughter rises softly, the lamps glow warmly, the stars shine above. Soon we will wander further into the clothing of Egypt, the linen garments, the jewelry, the styles that adorned daily life. But for now, let the peace of this Egyptian meal fill you, nourishing your spirit, carrying you gently into dreams, in the warm and golden land of ancient Egypt, where the sun shone brightly for most of the year. Clothing was light, simple, and flowing. It was not meant to weigh the body, but to comfort it, to allow the skin to breathe, to move gently in the breeze. And yet, Within this simplicity lay beauty's soft linen draped with elegance, jewelry that shimmered like sunlight on water, amulets carrying whispers of protection. To see an Egyptian dressed for daily life or for festival was to see harmony itself, comfort woven with grace, simplicity adorned with meaning. The heart of all Egyptian clothing was linen, made from the flax plant that grew abundantly along the Nile's fertile banks. Families planted flax as they did grain, harvesting it with care, soaking it in water to loosen its fibers, spinning those fibers into thread and weaving them on looms. The process was slow, requiring patience and steady hands. But the result was fabric light as air, smooth as water, and cool even beneath the hot desert sun. Linen became the skin of Egypt, wrapping its people in comfort from cradle to grave. For men, clothing was often simple. Farmers and laborers wore short kilts, tied at the waist, leaving their arms and legs free for work. The linen was plain, its color pale, unbleached, reflecting the sunlight. In cooler evenings, a cloak might be draped across the shoulders, its folds soft and warm. For those of higher status, scribes, officials, nobles, the kilts were longer, sometimes pleated, sometimes adorned with a sash or belt. Their linen was finer, woven more delicately, its folds falling with elegance. Yet whether plain or pleated, simple or adorned, the kilt remained the same in essence, light, comfortable, unhurried. Women wore long dresses, straight and flowing, sometimes with straps over the shoulders, sometimes wrapped closely around the body. The linen clung gently, soft against the skin, moving easily as they walked, worked, or danced. In wealthier homes, women wore garments of finer weave, sheer and delicate, layered one over another, the folds shifting like water in the light. Sometimes the dresses were pleated, their lines creating patterns of texture, their simplicity transformed into quiet beauty. Shawls too were worn, draped across the shoulders, offering both modesty and grace. Children, in their early years, often wore little or no clothing at all, free to run and play beneath the sun. As they grew older, they too wore linen kilts or dresses, simple and light. Their hair was sometimes cut into playful styles, a single sidelock left hanging, a symbol of youth. Adorned with small beads or simple amulets, they looked both joyful and protected, their innocence reflected in their clothing. But clothing alone was not the whole story. Jewelry adorned the people of Egypt, not only as decoration, but as protection, as blessing, as expression of spirit. Even the simplest homes kept beads of pharaohs, bright blue and green, strung into necklaces or bracelets. Copper bangles gleamed softly in the light, worn round wrists or ankles. Scarab amulets, shaped like beetles, hung from cords, carrying the promise of rebirth and good fortune. The eye of Horus, carved in stone or faience, guarded its wearer from harm. Each piece was more than beauty, it was a prayer, a companion, a quiet shield in wealthier homes. Jewelry was richer still. Gold, drawn from the deserts, was shaped into necklaces, wide collars that covered the chest. Each link inlaid with stones of turquoise, carnelian, and lapis lazuli. Earrings gleamed with polished stones, rings adorned fingers, anklets chimed softly as women walked. Men too wore amulets and rings, their jewelry symbols of status as much as devotion. Yet even in grandeur, Egyptian jewelry remained gentle, never harsh, always flowing, its colors echoing the river, the sky, the desert, cosmetics, too, were part of daily life, not out of vanity, but out of tradition, health, and reverence. Both men and women lined their eyes with kohl, drawn in black or green, extending gracefully toward the temples. This was beauty, yes, but also protection against the sun's glare, against flies, against illness. Skin was softened with oils, perfumed with lotus or myrrh, keeping it supple beneath the sun's heat. Wigs of human hair or palm fiber were worn on special occasions, adorned with flowers or beads, adding splendor to feasts and festivals. In these acts of adornment, the Egyptians expressed not vanity, but harmony with nature, with health, with life. Imagine now a festival day in Thebes. The streets are alive with music, the air fragrant with flowers, and the people are dressed in their finest. Men wear pleated kilts, their linen bright, their sashes tied carefully. Women wear flowing dresses, sheer layers moving like water, their collars of beads and stones glowing in the sun. Children laugh, their hair braided or left in playful locks, small amulets glimmering on their necks. Bracelets chime softly, anklets shine, eyes outlined in kohl reflect the sky. The whole scene is one of quiet splendor, beauty without excess, elegance born from simplicity. And yet, even on the quietest days, when families sit in courtyards or work in fields, clothing and jewelry carry meaning. A farmer's plain kilt is as much a part of Egypt as a noble's pleated garment. A child's faience bead is as precious as a queen's golden collar. For in each piece lies not only fabric or metal, but care, tradition, identity, and faith at night. When the day's garments are set aside, when jewelry is placed upon shelves, when oils are smoothed upon weary skin, the people of Egypt rest not only in comfort, but in beauty. Their clothing, their adornments, their amulets all are part of their lives, as natural as the Nile, as eternal as the stars. Now, as you close your eyes, imagine yourself dressed in soft linen, light against your skin, a necklace of blue beads resting upon your chest, a faint fragrance of lotus upon your hair. Around you, the air is warm, the lamps glow, the night is calm. Soon, we will wander further into the quiet rhythms of Egyptian trade and travel, into the journeys across desert and river. But for now, let the comfort of linen and the glow of jewelry carry you gently into dreams, in the golden land of ancient Egypt, where the river Nile stretched like a living thread through desert and field. Travel was both a necessity and a quiet adventure. People journeyed to trade, to visit temples, to see family, or simply to follow the steady rhythm of the river. Though the desert around them was vast and silent, their paths were filled with calm purpose, with the steady sound of footsteps, the creak of wooden boats, the murmur of voices carrying through still air. To travel in Egypt was not a hurried rush, but a slow unfolding. A journey made in harmony with the land and the river. The Nile was the great highway of Egypt. Its waters carried boats from village to village, from city to city, from the delta in the north to Nubia in the south. Small boats made of papyrus reeds glided along its surface, light and gentle, their passengers shaded by simple canopies. Larger wooden boats carried goods and people, their sails wide, catching the breath of the wind. The water itself was calm, reflecting the sky, broken only by the ripples of oars dipping steadily, the occasional leap of a fish, the call of birds along the shore. To sit upon a Nile boat was to feel the world slow, the journey itself becoming part of life's peace. Merchants filled these boats with goods, baskets of grain, jars of beer, bundles of flax. woven linens, polished stones, fragrant oils. From distant lands came incense, ebony, ivory, spices, and rare gems. At river markets, these goods were unloaded carefully, set upon mats in neat rows, their colors bright against the pale earth. The air filled with the scent of myrrh and cinnamon, the sweetness of dates and honey, the freshness of cucumbers and leeks. People moved quietly among the stalls, voices soft. Bargains made not in haste, but with calm discussion, hands gesturing gently as agreements were reached. Caravans also moved across the desert, their camels and donkeys laden with goods, their pace slow but steady. The desert air was vast, the horizon stretching endlessly, the sand glowing beneath the sun. Travelers walked together, telling stories to pass the time, their laughter mingling with the creak of leather saddles, the jingle of harnesses. At night, they rested beneath the stars, their fires glowing faintly, their voices quiet as they shared bread and dates. The silence of the desert wrapping around them like a cloak. Trade was not only about goods, but about connection. From Nubia came gold, rich and shining, carried north along the river. From the Levant came cedar wood, strong and fragrant, shaped into furniture and boats. From distant lands across the desert came exotic animals, incense, and spices, and in return, Egypt offered grain, linen, papyrus, and crafted objects, gifts from its fertile soil and skilled hands. Each exchange was a thread woven into the great tapestry of life, binding Egypt to lands beyond its borders. For ordinary families, travel was simpler. A farmer might carry surplus grain to a nearby market, his donkey walking steadily beside him. A mother might bring baskets of vegetables or jars of beer to trade for fish or linen. Children might walk alongside, their eyes wide at the colors and scents of the market, their hands clutching small coins or beads. The market was not only for trade, but also for meeting neighbors, hearing news, sharing laughter. It was a place of community, alive yet calm, busy yet unhurried. Festivals made travel even more vibrant. Boats decorated with flowers carried pilgrims to temples, their sails glowing white in the sun, their decks filled with singing and music. Caravans of families walked together towards sacred sites, their steps light, their hearts filled with devotion. Markets swelled with visitors, their stalls bright with offerings, their air alive with the fragrance of incense and food. Yet even in these moments of abundance, the pace remained gentle, the joy unhurried, the celebration flowing like the Nile itself. Imagine now walking through a market in an Egyptian town. The sun is warm, yet you stand beneath the shade of a sycamore. Before you are rows of baskets figs, glowing like jewels, cucumbers green and fresh, dates rich and sticky. To one side, a merchant displays necklaces of faience beads, their blue shining like the river. Another offers jars of fragrant oils, their lids sealed with clay, the scent of lotus drifting faintly through the air. People move slowly around you, their voices low, their faces calm, each exchange carried with respect, each moment filled with quiet life. For the Egyptians, travel and trade were not separate from faith. They gave thanks to Hapi, the god of the Nile, for smooth waters and generous floods. They prayed to Hathor for joy in their journeys, to Amen for strength, to Anubis for safety on desert paths. Offerings were made before journeys, prayers whispered before boats set sail, amulets worn close to the heart. Travel was not only movement but devotion, not only exchange but gratitude. At night, when boats rested along the shore or caravans settled in desert camps. The air grew still, the stars filled the sky, and the travelers closed their eyes in peace. They dreamed of home, of family, of the next day's path. Their journeys were long, yet never rushed, their pace steady, their hearts patient. For in Egypt, time itself was gentle, flowing like the river, guiding each traveler toward their destination in calm rhythm. Now, as you drift into sleep, imagine yourself upon a Nile boat. The sail rises gently, catching the breeze. The water ripples softly beneath you. The shore drifts past with its palms and reeds. The air carries the scent of lotus and grain. You sit in shade, the sound of oars steady as a heartbeat, your heart at rest, your spirit calm. Soon we will wander further into the world of Egyptian festivals, into the songs, the flowers, the processions that brought joy to their hearts. But for now, let the stillness of the Nile carry you gently into dreams, in the steady rhythm of ancient Egyptian life, where days flowed with the rising and setting of the sun. Festivals brought a pause, a breath of joy, a moment where ordinary routines gave way to celebration. These were not loud or frantic days, but gentle gatherings filled with music, flowers, offerings, and laughter. For the Egyptians, festivals were more than holidays. They were bridges between the people and the gods, moments when heaven touched earth, when joy and devotion walked hand in hand. The calendar of Egypt was rich with such festivals, each tied to the cycles of nature. The flooding of the Nile, the harvest of crops, the turning of seasons, and the honoring of gods. When the Nile swelled with its annual flood, families gathered to thank Hopi, the spirit of the river, for the water that renewed the soil. Lamps floated upon the water, their soft flames glimmering against the dark surface, their light dancing like stars upon the river. The air was filled with songs of gratitude, prayers whispered with hope, laughter mingling with the quiet lapping of waves. The festival of Opit was among the grandest. In Thebes, the god Ammon, along with Mut and Khonsu, was carried from the temple of Karnak to Luxor in great processions. Boats decorated with flowers and golden banners drifted along the river, their sails glowing in the sun. Musicians played flutes and drums, dancers swayed with grace, priests sang hymns, and the people followed joyfully along the banks. Offerings of bread, fruit, and beer were shared. Families feasted together in courtyards, and laughter filled the air. Yet even in its grandeur, the festival flowed with calm rhythm, a celebration of harmony as much as devotion. There were festivals for Hathor, goddess of joy and music. Her days were filled with dancing, with the sound of sistrums jingling softly, with women singing songs in her honor. Garlands of flowers were worn, music filled the streets, and cups of sweet wine were raised in gratitude. The people smiled, children laughed, the air shimmered with warmth. To celebrate Hathor was to celebrate life itself, its beauty, its love, its sweetness. Other festivals honored Osiris, the god of rebirth. Plays were performed, telling the story of his death and resurrection, his triumph over darkness. Seeds were planted in small beds, watered until they sprouted, symbols of life renewed. Families watched the green shoots emerge, their hearts lifted by the reminder that life was eternal, that death was not an end but a passage. These moments were not solemn alone, they were also filled with comfort, with gentle assurance, with hope. Even the smallest festivals brought peace. In villages, people decorated their homes with garlands of papyrus and lotus. Children carried flowers in their hands, their fingers sticky with honey cakes, their faces bright with joy. Women baked special breads shaped like animals or stars, drizzling them with honey, their fragrance drifting through the streets. Men shared jars of beer, their voices raised in gentle song, their laughter echoing softly in the warm air. At night, lamps were lit in every doorway, their light glowing like constellations upon the earth. Music was always present. The soft strumming of lutes, the clear notes of flutes, the steady rhythm of drums, the chiming of sistrums. Together they wove a tapestry of sound that lifted spirits without disturbing peace. Dancers moved with flowing steps, their bracelets jingling lightly, their arms swaying like reeds in the breeze. Children clapped along, their joy unrestrained, their laughter blending with the music like birdsong at dawn. Festivals also carried acts of kindness. Food was shared with neighbors, offerings given to the poor, gifts exchanged between friends. Temples opened their gates, welcoming all to join in prayer, in song, in feasting. The gods were honored, but so too was the community, bound together in gratitude and love. Imagine now walking through an Egyptian festival at dusk. The streets glow with lamps, their flames steady in the evening air. The scent of bread and honey mingles with the fragrance of lotus and incense. Music drifts from every corner, slow and soothing, carrying you forward. Families sit together, sharing food, telling stories, smiling softly. Children run past with garlands in their hair, their laughter light as the night itself. You pause, watching boats upon the river, their decks adorned with flowers, their lamps mirrored in the water. The whole scene is calm, gentle, timeless. For the Egyptians, festivals were more than moments of joy. They were reminders of balance, of harmony between people and gods, between land and river, between life and eternity. They were pauses in the rhythm of labor, spaces of renewal, gifts of peace. Now, as you close your eyes, imagine yourself at such a festival. A garland of lotus rests upon your shoulders. The air carries the fragrance of honey and incense. The music of flutes and drums flows gently around you. You are safe. You are calm. You are part of the great harmony of life. Soon we will wander further into the quiet wisdom of Egyptian scribes, into the world of ink and papyrus, of words that carried eternity. But for now, let the glow of the festival lamps guide you softly into dreams. In ancient Egypt, where stone monuments touched the sky and the Nile carried life across the land, there existed a quieter yet equally enduring power, the written word. It was the scribes who held this power, those who could shape thoughts into symbols, who could capture prayers, records, and stories upon papyrus and stone. Their world was not noisy with tools or markets, but calm, filled with the soft scratch of reed pens, the rustle of scrolls, the steady rhythm of words flowing from mind to hand. To be a scribe was to hold eternity in ink, to give voice to the gods, to preserve the memory of life itself. Picture a small chamber lit by the soft glow of daylight streaming through a narrow window. A scribe sits cross-legged upon a low mat, a wooden pallet before him. Upon it lighted cakes of color red and black made from ground minerals mixed with water. Beside them rests a bundle of reed pens, their tips cut finely, ready to write. Before him lies a sheet of papyrus, smooth and pale, waiting like still water for ripples of ink. The scribe dips his pen into the black pigment and begins to write. His hand moves slowly, carefully, shaping each hieroglyph with precision. Birds, reeds, spirals. and figures flow across the page, each one carrying meaning, each one part of the story. The sound is soft, almost like a whisper the reed pen brushing against the papyrus. The faint crackle of fibers absorbing ink. Outside, the world moves with the noise of fields, of markets, of riverboats. But here, in this room, there is only stillness, only thought taking form, only the calm of creation. Scribes were more than writers. They were keepers of memory. They recorded the harvest, counted the grain, noted the taxes. They wrote letters for those who could not write, copied prayers for temples, preserved stories for generations yet to come. Their hands shaped contracts of marriage, decrees of kings, hymns to the gods. Without them, the rhythm of Egypt would have been lost to silence. With them, the nation spoke in ink, its voice carried across centuries. Their training was long and patient. As children, chosen often from families of scribes or officials, they learned to hold a reed pen, to copy signs again and again upon potsherds or wooden boards. They memorized hundreds of hieroglyphs, their meanings, their sounds, their order. They learned to mix ink, to prepare papyrus, to keep scrolls carefully rolled and tied. Their teachers guided them with firm patience, correcting each line, praising each careful hand. Slowly, through practice and devotion, the child became a scribe, stepping into the quiet dignity of the craft. The life of a scribe was considered honorable, for it freed one from the heavy labor of fields or workshops. Instead, their labor was of the mind and hand, their tools light, their burden the weight of knowledge. They wore simple linen, sat in shaded rooms, traveled with officials, and worked in temples. Yet their life was not without effort, for hours of writing left backs bent, fingers stained, eyes weary. Still, they worked with calm devotion, knowing their words carried weight beyond their own lives. In temples, scribes copied hymns, prayers, and sacred texts. They wrote upon stone walls, upon wooden coffins, upon papyrus scrolls placed within tombs. Their words guided souls in the afterlife, preserved rituals for priests, honored the gods. To write the name of a god was itself an act of reverence, each stroke of the pen a prayer, each sign a thread of devotion. In courts, they recorded judgments, making sure truth was remembered. In offices, they tallied accounts, ensuring fairness and order. Everywhere, their presence was quiet but essential, their work unseen yet enduring. Imagine now a young scribe seated beside the Nile. The sun sets gently, casting golden light across the water. He balances a board upon his knees, his reed pen dipping into ink, his hand moving steadily across a strip of papyrus. Behind him, the river whispers, birds call softly, the breeze rustles the reeds. His words flow like the water itself, carrying memory forward, linking today to tomorrow. The scribes also loved stories. Between duties, they copied tales of adventure, of magic, of gods and heroes. They wrote of shipwrecked sailors, of journeys to distant lands, of wisdom passed from father to son. These stories, preserved in ink, carried joy and wonder across time, reminding all who read them that life was more than work. That imagination too was sacred. To be a scribe was to walk between worlds, the world of daily life and the world of eternity. Their words preserved the harvest, but also the prayers. They wrote of taxes, but also of gods. They captured the fleeting and the eternal alike, knowing that their work would outlast them, carved into stone, rolled into scrolls, whispered through ages at night when the ink was set aside. When the scrolls were tied and stored, the scribes rested in calm, their hands stained with color, their eyes weary, their hearts full. They lay upon mats, the memory of words drifting through their dreams. And in those dreams, perhaps, they saw the gods reading their work, smiling softly, blessing the ink that carried human voices into eternity. Now, as you close your eyes, imagine yourself with a reed pen in hand. You dip it into ink, steady and calm, and draw the curve of a bird, the spiral of water, the line of a reed. Each stroke is slow, deliberate, graceful. The papyrus beneath your hand glows softly in the light, the words flowing like a gentle stream. Around you, the air is quiet, the night is calm, the river hums softly in the distance. Soon, we will wander further into the gentle art of Egyptian medicine, into the ways they healed with herbs, prayers, and care. But for now, let the stillness of the scribe's world carry you gently into dreams. In the calm rhythm of ancient Egyptian life, where the river provided water and the earth gave grain, there was also a quiet knowledge of healing. The people of Egypt lived close to nature, and from the fields, gardens, and riverbanks they gathered remedies, herbs, oils, and resins that soothed pain, calmed fevers, and comforted the weary. Healing was not rushed, nor was it seen as separate from faith. To them, medicine was a gentle weaving of care, of nature, of prayer, and of kindness. Imagine a small house at dawn. A child lies upon a reed mat, his forehead warm with fever. His mother sits beside him, a bowl of cool water at her side. She dips a linen cloth into the water, wrings it gently, and lays it across his brow. The air is filled with the faint fragrance of chamomile, steeped in water to calm his rest. The mother hums softly as she tends to him, her voice a lullaby, her care itself a medicine. In Egypt, healing often began in such moments, simple, tender, filled with love. Herbal remedies were at the heart of Egyptian medicine. Garlic and onions, strong and fragrant, were used to strengthen the body, to ward off illness, to flavor food that nourished the weak. Honey, golden and sweet, was applied to wounds, its touch soothing, its power cleansing. Aloe, drawn from the desert plant, cooled burns and softened skin. Coriander eased digestion, while cumin calmed the stomach. From willow trees near the river, bark was gathered to ease pain, its properties known long before the science of later ages. Each plant carried not only flavor but healing, its gift offered quietly, its presence a comfort. Priests often served as physicians, their knowledge preserved in scrolls of papyrus filled with lists of remedies, incantations, and prayers. The Ebers papyrus, one of the oldest medical texts, contained hundreds of recipes, mixtures of herbs, minerals, and oils designed to soothe the sick. Yet even these remedies were written not only as instructions, but as blessings, each treatment accompanied by words of prayer, each act of healing seen as both science and devotion. In temples, healing was sacred. Patients came seeking the touch of divine power, lying in sacred chambers, waiting for dreams that would reveal cures from the gods. Priests prepared ointments from myrrh, resin, and oils, their fragrance filling the air as lamps flickered softly. Incantations were whispered, hands were laid gently upon the sick, and faith mingled with medicine. To heal the body was also to heal the spirit, to remind the patient that they were watched over, loved, and not alone. Surgeons, too, had their place. With bronze tools carefully shaped, they cleaned wounds, set broken bones, stitched cuts with linen thread. Their work was quiet, precise, filled with patience. They understood that the body was fragile, yet resilient, and their cares sought not only to mend but to ease suffering. Even dentistry, simple but thoughtful, existed teeth cleaned with powders of salt and herbs, aching gums soothed with ointments of honey and resin. Each act was small, yet each carried comfort, a reminder that even pain could be met with care. Midwives guided mothers through childbirth, their presence steady, their hands skilled, their words calming. Amulets of Tauret, the goddess who protected mothers and children, hung nearby, their presence reassuring. Oils were warmed, herbs prepared, prayers whispered. In these moments, healing was not only of the body but of the heart, a weaving of strength and gentleness, of faith and skill. For the Egyptians, healing was also found in balance. To eat well, to rest, to bathe in the cool waters of the Nile, these were medicines as vital as herbs and ointments. Cleanliness was part of health. Bodies were washed daily, linens kept fresh, homes aired with breezes. Perfumed oils softened the skin, banished insects, and calmed the spirit. Life itself, lived in harmony with nature, was seen as a remedy, a path to wellness. Imagine now a small garden beside a home. Rows of herbs grow in the soil: mint, garlic, coriander. Bees hum softly among the blossoms, their honey gathered for sweet medicine. A woman bends to pluck a handful of leaves, her basket light, her heart calm. She knows which plant to brew for fever, which to grind for ointment, which to mix with honey for a cough. Around her, the garden itself feels like a place of healing, its fragrance soothing, its colors gentle, its gifts endless. But medicine was not only herbs and treatments, it was kindness. To sit beside the sick, to bring them water, to whisper prayers, to sing songs that eased fear. These were acts of healing as powerful as any potion. Families cared for one another with patience, neighbors offered help, priests gave blessings. Healing was shared, woven into the fabric of community, a reminder that no one was ever truly alone in suffering at night. When lamps glowed softly in homes, and the sick lay resting upon mats, the air often carried the fragrance of herbs steeped in warm water, of oils rubbed upon the skin. Mothers hummed lullabies, priests whispered prayers, healers sat quietly by. The silence was filled not with fear but with calm, with the assurance that life itself carried healing, that the gods watched, that the earth gave its gifts freely. Now, as you drift into rest, imagine yourself lying in such a home. A lamp glows beside you, its flame steady. A cool cloth rests upon your brow, fragrant with chamomile. The air carries the sweetness of honey, the freshness of mint, the warmth of oil. A gentle voice hums nearby, soothing, steady, kind. You are safe, you are cared for, you are healing. Soon, we will wander into the final chapter, where the rhythms of daily life in Egypt draw to a close, and where the land itself whispers its timeless lullaby. But for now, let the healing calm of Egypt carry you gently into dreams. For many nights, we have wandered together through the land of ancient Egypt. We have watched the river rise and fall, seen farmers tending their fields, heard children laughing in courtyards, and walked softly through gardens, temples, and markets. We have sat with scribes as they shaped words, with healers as they prepared herbs, with families as they shared bread and figs beneath the stars. And now, as our long journey comes gently to its close, we pause by the Nile itself, the heart of Egypt, the endless thread that carried their days, their dreams, their lives. The Nile was more than water. It was breath, rhythm, lullaby. Its floods renewed the land, its currents carried boats, its shores gave rise to fields, villages, temples, and cities. By its banks, children played, women washed linen, men cast nets, priests lit lamps. It was the giver of food, the keeper of time, the silent companion of generations. To live in Egypt was to live with the Nile, to follow its rhythm as one follows the steady beating of a heart. Life, too, followed rhythm. Each day began with the rising sun, welcomed with prayers to Ra, the sky painted gold across the desert. Each evening ended with lamps glowing in courtyards, families gathered in calm conversation. The stars shimmering above, like jewels scattered across velvet. Between dawn and dusk, people worked, played, prayed, and rested, their hours marked not by haste but by gentle continuity. Life was not rushed, was savored, its sweetness found in bread, in laughter, in music. In memory, their world was filled with beauty. Not only in grand temples and tombs, but in the smallest moments, a mother weaving linen, a father teaching a child to fish, a gardener tending vines heavy with grapes, a child laughing at the splash of water in the Nile. Every detail was treasured, every act meaningful, every day a thread woven into eternity. And through it all, the Egyptians carried faith. They believed that life did not end with death, that beyond the horizon of this world lay another, where gardens bloomed forever, where families gathered again, where the soul rested in peace. Tombs painted with feasts and music, scrolls inscribed with prayers, amulets placed upon heart-soul whispered the same truth. Life is eternal. Memory is protection. Love never fades. Imagine now, standing at the edge of the Nile at night. The river glimmers beneath the moon, its surface calm, its waters whispering softly. In the distance, you see the lights of small villages, lamps glowing in courtyards, their flames steady against the darkness. You hear the faint sound of laughter, the murmur of prayers, the song of crickets in the reeds. The air carries the fragrance of lotus, the coolness of water, the stillness of desert. Around you, the world is vast, yet you feel no fear, only peace, only the calm of eternity. In this stillness, you realize what the Egyptians knew, that life is precious, not because of grandeur, but because of its simple rhythms. Bread shared, songs sung, names remembered, prayers whispered. These small moments are the essence of eternity, the gifts we carry within us, the treasures that endure beyond time. And so, as our story of ancient Egypt draws to a close, let us rest in their wisdom. Let us carry with us the calm of their river, the warmth of their homes, the music of their festivals, the tenderness of their care. Let us remember that life, like the Nile, flows gently forward, never rushing, never halting, always moving with steady grace. Now, as you drift into the depths of sleep, imagine the river's lullaby wrapping around you. The water glows in the moonlight, the breeze moves softly through the reeds, the stars shimmer above. You are safe, you are calm, you are carried upon the eternal current of life. The story is complete, but its peace remains, flowing through your dreams, steady as the Nile, endless as the stars.